To each of you, it is a pleasure to have you here once again in this space. I would like to welcome you to the second day of this annual meeting. And today we have the opportunity to get together for a co-construction of regional priorities in education of the early childhood. And today we are going to work together and define priorities as well as main challenges in this area, as well as the ways that we would like to tackle these together. This is a space that is an intimate space where we can speak in a trustworthy manner. We have a lot of expectations of your participation where we would like to hear you. We would like for you to be generous with your knowledge and experiences. So please, we would like to invite you to participate actively because, as I was saying yesterday, the role that we expect from you as representatives and stakeholders in our hubs is that you can share with us your challenges so that everything that we do can be pertinent and can be in context according to the challenges that each country has. So before we begin, we would like to remind you the structure of the day. So we are going to be working in a workshop format with different sessions. Each one of them is thought through to be able to guide us in a reflection in a shared way, and to be able to have a knowledge agenda built amongst us all. We would like to thank you for the participation that you provided yesterday as well. And for those who were not able to be with us, that's no problem. And that is why we have Rosa Maria, our support to the countries, who is going to give us a few key messages that came up from yesterday. So, Rosa, I would like to, yeah, the floor is yours.
Buenos días a todos y gracias por la
Good morning
oportunidad
to
de
all of you, and thank you
recapitular en
for
un
the
día tan
opportunity to be able
importante
to
como el
have a
que fue
recap
ayer.
regarding such an important day as it
Hoy
was
día vamos a
yesterday.
tener también
Today we are going to
participantes
talk about,
en su
today we have
quehacer, que es la
participants
primera infancia. También les damos la bienvenida
regarding
y
early
tal vez
childhood.
que no
And for
estuvieron
those of
ayer,
you who
para los
were
que
not here with
estuvieron,
us yesterday,
nos gustaría
we would
contar que
like to
ayer
share with you that yesterday
se expusieron los objetivos de esta importante
we
jornada,
exposed the,
que es
the
realmente
objectives of this
fortalecer el
day,
trabajo de
which is to
KIX LAC y
strengthen
a su
KIX
vez
LAC's
fortalecer la
work and
articulación
also strengthen
entre
the
los miembros,
articulation between the
y eso
members.
logra apropiación de las
And that has
actividades de cada
appropriation of the
uno
different activities of
las
each one of
partes
the
en los
parts
ministerios,
in the
desde
ministries
donde sea
and
que
or from
ustedes estén
wherever that you
representando.
are
Tuvimos
whoever you are
también al
representing.
director de SUMA,
We also had the director of
quien además de
SUMA,
agradecer
who
a
not only
GPE y
thanked
al
us
IDRC
and
por hacer
GPE and
posible esta gran iniciativa de
IDRC for
KICS, también
allowing this
destaca la
great
alianza de trabajo que se
participation, but also
desarrolla en la
he highlighted the
OECS
alliance that we
y
have with
SUMA, y también
OECS
se
and
describió la
SUMA, and also
colaboración con
described the
el trabajo que se
collaboration
hace
with the
hombro a
work that is
hombro
carried
con
out
OECS
shoulder
y
to
con
shoulder
cada
with
uno de los
OECS and with
países.
each
Y
one of the
esa es una
countries.
particularidad de
And this is
KICS,
something
que
that
se
is very
trabaja
particular with
con los
KICS,
países
where
para los
we can work
países.
with the countries and for
A
the
través de la
countries.
jornada, ayer se
And
hizo
throughout the
remembranza
day
del encuentro
yesterday, we
anual de
remembered
2023, el
the
año
yearly
pasado en
encounter of
Tegucigalpa, que fue la
2023
génesis
in
de algunas
Tegucigalpa, which was
iniciativas
the genesis of
donde
some
algunos
initiatives
representantes
where some
hoy
representatives
coinciden con los
today
representantes
coincide
del
with
año
the
pasado,
representatives
y
from
en
last
ambas
year.
ocasiones
And
tienen
in both
voz
occasions,
para
they have
expresar
a
sus
voice to be
desafíos
able
y
to
también sus
express
oportunidades
their
en cada uno de los
challenges and
ministerios
opportunities in each
o
one
en
of the
cada una de las
ministries
organizaciones
or
que
in each one of
representan.
the organizations that they
También se
represent.
destacó el
We
importante
also,
rol que tienen
what was also
los
highlighted was the important role
representantes,
that the
ustedes mismos,
representatives, or you, each of you, have
en este proyecto
in
que
this
es
project
facilitar el
that is to
diálogo. Y
facilitate
también
dialogue.
contamos
And
con la
we
participación de
also count on the
representantes expresando su
participation
buena
of
disposición a
representatives
continuar
who showed us their
apoyando, y
uh, availability to
fue muy
continue
agradable
supporting. And
escuchar
it
a los
was also
representantes
great to be able
que
to
ha
listen
dejado
to
una huella muy
the
positiva
represents and
las
the
visitas
participants who have
técnicas,
had
los trabajos
great
que se
experience
han
with the visits
realizado
that were
en
carried out
articulación con otras
in
unidades,
articulation with other
y
units.
también se recalcó
And we also
el
what was
nivel
also
de
highlighted was the level
preparación
of
que
preparation
el KICS ha logrado
that
llegar
Geeks has
antes de hacer
accomplished
una visita
to
técnica.
before a
El
technical
recorrido
visit.
de las
The
iniciativas que han sido
initiatives
implementadas hoy
were
mismo, como
shown,
el workshop, los
like for
webinars,
example, the workshops, the
ha
webinars,
dejado los
and
KICS Conversations,
Geeks
todas las
conversations,
iniciativas,
and all of the
ha dejado
initiatives have
plasmado que
left
la actividad
that the
está realizando
activities
dentro
that
del
are
KIX
being carried
realmente
out within
involucran
KIX
a
really
representantes,
involve
pero también a las personas
representatives, but
adecuadas
also
en cada
the
uno de los
adequate people in
segmentos que
each
se
one
van
of the
tocando y
segments
de
that
los
we are
temas
talking
que
about
vamos
and the
incluyendo.
different
El
subjects that we are
representante del
including.
OECS
The
destacó el
representative of the
impulso que ha venido
OECS
dando el KIX
highlighted
con el tema de
the
EMIS,
drive that KIX has
de
had
sistemas
with
de
the
información en las regiones del Medio
EMIS in the
Oriental.
region
Y
of
también
Eastern
se dedicó un
Caribbean. And we
segmento
also dedicated a
a lo que
segment
es
to
el esfuerzo que se está
the
haciendo con la
effort that is
Universidad de
being
West
carried out
Indies
with the
en
University of
todo lo
West
que es
Indies,
el trabajo
including
del
everything
currículum
that
para
has to do with the
la
curriculum
formación inicial.
for
Y también se
early
mencionó
childhood.
una
We also
coalición de
mentioned a
universidades que
coalition
es
of
parte de los
universities
próximos
that is a part
pasos.
of the next
Y hablando de los
steps.
próximos pasos,
And talking about
también se
next steps,
mencionó
we also
el ciclo de
mentioned
movilización de la primera
the
infancia, que hoy día
mobilization
estamos
cycle of early
dedicando
childhood. That is what we are going to be
especialmente a ese
looking at
tema.
today, especially,
El estudio de uso de
and
evidencia,
the
que
study of
también
the use of
está por
evidence,
venir, a las nuevas visitas de
and
aprendizaje,
also
y
the
también
new
se
learning
mencionó
visits,
la
and
reunión
also
presencial que va a pasar en el
the
2025.
in-person
El
meeting that we are
representante de
going
la
to have in
IDRC, al
2025.
hacer un
The
recorrido de
representative
todos
of
los
the
proyectos
IDRC, once he showed all the
actuales y que
projects,
están iniciando,
the
hizo
ones that are current
énfasis
and the ones that
en
are to
que
begin, he
en
made
el KICS la
emphasis
idea es colaborar,
in that in KICS, the idea
no
is to
competir,
collaborate,
y que
not to
la
compete.
importancia de la
And the
articulación es
importance of the
clave entre los
articulation is
diferentes
key
actores.
among the
El
different players.
representante
The
del GPE
representative of
también
GPE
destacó que
also
KICS es como
highlighted
una
that
hoja
KICS
para catalizar, es una hoja de ruta
is
para
also
catalizar
a
políticas
roadmap
y
to
un
be a
ecosistema de
catalyst for the
actores. Y en
different
ese
activities and
sentido,
also one of the
reconoce que
players.
fue muy bueno
And he also
tener los
recognized that it was
ejemplos
very good to have the different
tangibles y
examples that were
particulares que se
tangible,
mencionaron ayer por parte de los
that were
representantes.
expressed yesterday by
Ese fue
different
un recorrido
representatives.
de
So that's just a
casi 3 horas
recap
ayer de
of
una
about 3 hours
interesante exposición
of the
por
meeting we had
muchos de los
yesterday
representantes
by
también.
different
Y
representatives. And
quisiéramos abrir la
I would also
plataforma por
like
si
to open the
alguien
platform in
quisiera
case
hacer
anybody
algún
would like
comentario hoy
to
día,
make any comment today.
antes de continuar con
Before we
nuestro día hoy.
continue, if anybody would like to make a comment regarding what happened yesterday, before we begin today.
Si no tenemos
If
voluntarios o
there is
nadie
no
quedó con la palabra
volunteers
para decir algo,
or
entonces
nobody would like to
procedemos,
take the
Mar.
floor, then
Muchísimas
we will
gracias.
continue forward, Mar.
Muchas
Please go
gracias,
ahead.
Rosa, por
Thank you,
este resumen
Rosa,
que nos
for this
das. A
summary.
continuación, tenemos el gusto de recibir las palabras de
And now we
bienvenida
have the
de
welcome
Cícera
words
Simon,
from
jefa de la
Cicerat
División
Simons,
Humana
who is in
Social
charge
de
of the social
OECS, quien
human
nos ofrecerá
of
una
OEC,
introducción
who
a
is
los
going to
objetivos
share
de
with
esta
us the
jornada.
objectives
Cícera,
of
te
this
damos una
day.
calurosa
Cicera,
bienvenida. Como siempre, es un gusto
as
tenerte con
always, it's a
nosotros.
pleasure to have you here with us.
Buenos dias and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ma. I'll be very succinct and let me thank you and the team at SUMA KIX Latin America for this opportunity. Let me also begin by acknowledging the presence of all on the call, our chief education officers, whether permanent secretaries, education officers, experts in early childhood colleagues, pleasant good morning. It is indeed an honor to join you today to reflect on a matter close to our hearts and the futures of our societies, early childhood education, and its transformative potential for Latin America and the Caribbean. Our work with institutions such as SUMA and KIX LAC initiative underscores the commitment that we share to shaping an inclusive, equitable, and high-quality educational landscape for the youngest among us. At the heart of our collaborative efforts is the unwavering belief that access to quality early childhood offers a powerful means to break cycles of poverty, build resilience, and foster more equitable societies. The reality, however, is that many children across the region continues to face limited opportunities. We have a number of socioeconomic disparities, in some instances, rural isolation, indigenous community barriers. I'm thinking back of our colleagues and the groups in Dominica. And importantly, the gender gaps, they impede our children's early learning and development perspectives. Yet, we are really not that powerless against these challenges. And I say this noting our consistent effort as a Caribbean region and Latin America to prioritize early childhood. I believe that our concrete efforts can be the tide that raises all ships, bringing impactful change to every child's early learning journey. So in closing, our partnership aims to deliver a change through knowledge exchange, innovation, whether it is low innovation, very basic innovation, whether it is innovation in the way we do things, our operations, the systems that we set up, but importantly, ensuring that we have evidence-based solutions. And so initiatives like KIX LAC Network provide a crucial platform for sharing insights, fostering innovation, and building capacity among groups like ours, educational leaders, stakeholders, and the wider community. Therefore, colleagues, I call on all of us to put in our best effort to continue to prioritize our efforts in ensuring and improving quality early childhood. Let us not forget that it is not merely what teachers do within the classroom, but really it extends to the home, the family, the community. And so together, we need to embrace the efforts of each other. We need to embrace the efforts of that wider society in helping to, one, optimize the resources that are available, and secondly, to really target our interventions. So colleagues, let us keep up this momentum. Let us together harness our resources. Let us continue to share best practices. Let us remain dedicated to inclusive growth. We can really foster environments where every child, regardless of the circumstance, can thrive. So the future of the OECS, and by extension, Latin America, really depends on the strength and commitment of all of us, even right here in these discussions. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Cícera, como
Thank you
siempre.
very much,
Es muy
Cícera, as
emocionante
always.
escucharte. Creo que estas
It is very
palabras
exciting
marcan el
to
inicio
listen to
entonces de
you,
una
and I think these
conversación
words mark the initiation or
queremos
the
que todos pongan
beginning
en
of
agenda y
these words that we
nuevamente
would like
gracias
to
por
all place in our
acompañarnos.
agenda. And thank you
Bueno,
very much
para
once again for
adentrarnos
being here
entonces en
with
la
us. So
primera
to start
discusión
now
temática
with
de la
the first
jornada,
discussion
quiero
for
invitar al
today,
director
I would
de
like
KIX,
to
Raúl
invite the
Chacón, que nos va a
director,
ofrecer
Raúl
en un
Chacón, who is
principio
going to
una
offer
presentación
a
conceptual
presentation
sobre
of the
esta primera línea de
of the
profundización
concept
que
of this
queremos
first
abordar
line
en
of
nuestro
depth that
ciclo
we
de
would like to talk
movilización
about in
sobre
our
primera
mobilization cycle
infancia. Raúl nos
regarding
va a
early
contar un
childhood.
poquito sobre
He's going to share with
contexto,
us about the
relevancia de la
context,
educación en primera
relevance of
infancia,
education in
específicamente para niños y
early
niñas entre
childhood, especially for those
entre 0
children
y 6
between
años.
0 and
También va a
6 years of
explorar
age, and
cuestiones claves
also some
sobre la
issues that
importancia
are
de la
key
educación
regarding the importance of
inicial,
education,
diagnósticos, desafíos, así como la colaboración
diagnostics,
intersectorial
challenges,
y
as
las
well as
dimensiones de
intersector
política educativa. Como
collaboration
verán, es
and
bastante
policies of
amplio,
education.
pero
As you can see, it's very
justamente el
broad,
deseo de esta
but the
sesión es
desire
que
of this
podamos
session is
priorizar
that we can
entre todos
prioritize
esos desafíos que estamos
among all of
viviendo.
these
Raúl,
challenges that we
adelante.
are living with. Raúl, the floor is yours.
Good morning, colleagues. Bonjour. Buenos días a todos, todas. Un
Good morning
gusto
to each of you.
verlas nuevamente.
I am so happy to see all of you once again.
El día de ayer estuvo muy
Yesterday,
provechoso para seguir
we were able to
construyendo
take
lo que somos
advantage of the
como red
day
de
to continue
trabajo
building as
entre
this
los
work
países de América
network that we have
Latina,
between the Latin American countries,
Centroamérica, el
Central
Caribe, Caribe
America, and the
Oriental, cada uno
Caribbean,
con sus
Eastern Caribbean, each
particularidades.
with your
Seguimos
particularities, and we continue
intercambiando y
exchanging
aprendiendo unos de otros.
and
Agradezco mucho tus
learning
palabras, Cícera,
from each other. And I
como líder
appreciate your words, Cicera,
de
as
nuestro
leader of
partner
our
del
partner
Caribe Oriental,
of
la
Eastern
Organización de
Caribbean,
Estados del Caribe
the
Oriental,
organization of
porque
the
efectivamente pone la
OECS,
visión
because you place the
donde queremos seguir
vision
colaborando
of where we would like
precisamente
to
para
continue
aprender de las temáticas
collaborating to be able to
que
learn
estamos todos desarrollando. La
from
primera
all of these
infancia, la
themes that we
educación en
are
primera
developing.
infancia,
Early childhood
vamos a discutir de eso hoy día
is something we are
justamente
going
lo
to
que queremos
discuss
hacer,
today,
queremos
and we want to
plantear
do so. We want to
esta
be able to
discusión
bring up this
que
discussion.
vamos a
And today we are going to prepare, we are starting to prepare the path to be able to work through 2025. Therefore, it is something that an opportunity to, and we would like to invite you to have a vision of what is happening in the different countries, in each of your countries. What is your vision regarding the main challenges that are being incorporated, and how can we contribute from the mobilization of specialists and of knowledge to the developments that are necessary and that they can be timely and therefore go in that direction? If we can share the presentation, I would like to show you in a summarized way the cycle we showed yesterday, something that is very similar to this, but with the focus of evidence use. The use of evidence and monitoring, learning from the students, the strengthening of the data systems of information. This had all been part of the first cycle, and we would like to think of a new cycle where we have a conversation with you on the priorities that the countries are bringing up in the region, and to place focus on education in early childhood, what we can understand as early childhood education and care. And this is something that this work that we carry out with the smaller children from birth all the way until they are 6 years old, in the preparation for them to enter into the school system as well. And in that sense, today we are identifying, as we had provided last year, we have 3 cycles where in the beginning of we would like to talk about more structural of the policies having to do with the context and the relevance that we are working on. And then after that, go more into a depth having to do with the quality framework, curriculum, evaluation, assessments, and teacher training, and what it means to have the pedagogical practices for this level. And then towards the end of the year, we are going to go deeper into what those things that appear, and we would like to hear and have 2 work groups to be able to have this discussion and have it a little bit deeper, and thinking of identifying those challenges and also the way how we can tackle them. I think that's the largest sense. And there you can see that throughout the year, there are different initiatives that we have been able to deploy. And Mar yesterday was saying as the webinars and the workshops of different kind and the KIX conversations to also see what is relevant in the different countries, and always wanting to be able to place on discussion what is happening in each nation, what are we doing in each of the countries, and be able to inform that from the regional dialogue and with contributions from the global view. What is happening in other areas, in other regions, and what are they also carrying out, and how can we promote this from international organisms that are working on this as well? In a cross-cut way, learning, we know that learning is important, and as what we were saying as a central point in the challenges of the learning crisis that we have right now, we need to focus on comprehensive learning from the basic until all that is included, including literacy, all the way to the social emotional, which is definitely key in the point of view of interpersonal, intrapersonal, as we well know, in these different abilities and competencies that are key for today. And maybe we would also like to see gender inclusion, which are also key to know that these cycles, and that is where we are placing focus, especially in the populations that are that are the ones that with more difficulties. Next.
The idea is to have a community of practice, so we are moving on from the conceptual side, but also the academic literature. But international agencies and our partners like UNESCO, UNICEF, international banks like the World Bank, The Inter-American
OECD o la
Development
OECD
Bank,
también está haciendo
the
mucho trabajo en ese
OECD
sentido.
is
Vamos a
also
traer a los
doing some work
especialistas,
in this
por
area. We
supuesto.
will be bringing
¿Me sigues la
specialists,
mina, por
of
favor?
course. Next slide.
Voy a solamente dar
I
algunas
would like
ideas
to give
centrales.
you
Podemos
some
pasar a la
general
siguiente.
ideas.
Para mencionar
We can move to the
lo que
next
queremos
one
ahora conversar, digamos. Queremos
to talk about
conversar,
what we would like to discuss
decía yo
today.
respecto, vamos a dividir
I was saying
las
that
dos
we are
sesiones que
going
vamos a tener
to have
hoy día
two
en discutir
sessions.
de los aspectos más
We're going to have
estructurales.
split rooms
Vamos
to
a
talk
ir
about the more structural
a conversar
aspects.
en grupos,
We
en un
will
grupo más
be
pequeño,
having a
digamos,
discussion in a
mundo
smaller group.
anglófono y franco en esta
We will
sala,
have one conversation
en la
between those
próxima
who speak
sala,
English
en
and
otra sala,
Spanish, and we will have
perfectamente
another breakup
hispanoparlante,
room with
para
those
poder
who
profundizar
speak
en esto y
Spanish
luego de
to
los
be
temas del
able
segundo
to
subciclo.
dive
En
deeper
este
into
primer
these topics,
subciclo
and then
nosotros
the
queremos
topics
abrir
for
la
the
conversación más
second subcycle.
estratégica
So now we
de
would like
desarrollo
to
de
talk about
políticas
more
educativas.
strategic
La
topics
primera
on
pregunta que
how
nos
to
aparece,
develop
por supuesto, tiene que ver con la
educational
relevancia de la
policies.
educación
The
inicial.
first question, of course, has to do
Sabemos
with
y
the
hay
relevance of
literatura
early childhood
y
education.
estudios y literatura
There
que
are
lo
studies
confirman,
and
la
literature,
importancia de
abundant
que los niños y
literature that
niñas
confirm
tengan el
the
cuidado
importance
y atención
of
educativa
childhood
desde
care
el
and
nacimiento.
education
Y
since
en ese
birth.
sentido, eso marca una
And
diferencia
in
en la
that
trayectoria
sense, this
educativa y,
marks a
por supuesto, en las
difference in your
trayectorias
educational
de empleabilidad
trajectories,
y académicas
also
futuras
access
también.
to
Entonces,
work
la pregunta que
and
nos hacemos ahí es en
studies.
qué medida los
So
países,
the
cada uno de
question
nuestros
is,
países, está tomando
in
en
our
serio la
countries,
relevancia de esto. O
are
se
they
requiere
taking
discutir
this
más. Es parte
seriously,
de lo que
or do we
queremos
need to
discutir,
further the
por
conversation? That
supuesto.
is something
Lo
we would
mismo
like
respecto a
to
los
address
diagnósticos
today. The
nacionales
same goes
y
for
regionales del estado de la
regional and
educación
national diagnosis on the
en primera
current
infancia.
situation of early
Tenemos
childhood
los
education.
datos
We
necesarios,
do have,
sabemos que
do
hay
we have enough
desafíos
data?
enormes desde el punto de
We
vista
are
de la
aware of the fact that
cobertura,
we
del
are
acceso
facing challenges
de los niños
regarding
más pequeños,
coverage and
niños y niñas más
access
pequeños, a salas de
for younger
cuna, a
children
jardines infantiles
to
y de luego al sistema
daycare,
preescolar. Por
kindergarten,
supuesto, en la
and
medida que nos
the
acercamos
entire preschool
al
system.
sistema escolar,
And
al
as
primero, a lo
we come
básico, a la primaria,
closer to the school, to
tenemos más
first
niños y
grade, to
niñas
primary
en el
school,
preescolar, kinder
we have
o
more
nivel transición
children
1 y
in the
2, digamos, pero hacia los 4
transition
y 5 años
levels.
hay un
But
poquito
when
más,
they
pero
are
hacia acá los
close
niveles
to
de
4 to 5
cobertura,
years,
mientras más pequeños
we
son los
have more
niños,
coverage
tenemos
there.
desafíos
But
enormes
for
ahí
younger
y
children,
sabemos
we
la
are still
diferencia que
facing
marca
enormous challenges, and
incorporarse
we
entonces
know
al
what
sistema de
difference
educación.
it can make
El
to
tema de la colaboración
start with their
intersectorial
education.
es fundamental. Hemos
Intersectoral
tenido ya
collaboration
algunas
is another key
experiencias
topic. We
interesantes
have
dentro
seen
del
some
KIX, donde, por
interesting
ejemplo,
experiences
una de las
as part
visitas
of
técnicas que
KIX.
comentábamos
One of the
ayer
technical
del
visits, for
Salvador
example, we
visitó
mentioned yesterday, people
el
from El
sistema
Salvador
Chile Crece contigo o Chile
visited the
Crece
Chilean
allá,
system,
que
Chile
efectivamente
Crece
es un
contigo, Chile
esfuerzo
grows with you,
intersectorial muy
which
fuerte,
is
donde los
actually a
sistemas de salud
cross-sectoral
cobran
effort
una
where the
relevancia fundamental,
healthcare
así como los
systems are
servicios
also quite
sociales,
relevant,
al momento
as
de
well as
generar esta
social
intersectorialidad
services,
con
to
educación.
produce
Sabemos
this
que desde
intersectoral
educación hay
collaboration
una
with the
responsabilidad muy
education
importante en todo lo que
representatives.
tiene que ver
We
con
know
educación inicial,
education,
pero al mismo
the
tiempo
ministries of
reconocemos la
education
relevancia de generar
play a key role in early childhood
convenios
education,
de
but we are also
cooperación
aware
y
of the
mirada
fact that we
estratégica
need
nacional. Esto,
cooperation
en algún
and having
sentido,
a strategic
relevo el caso del Salvador,
policy
porque
as a
efectivamente
country. And I mentioned El
se
Salvador
toma como una
again
prioridad nacional que supera el
because it
sector y
was
que por lo tanto se
considered a
empuja
national
que los sectores
priority
se
that goes
coordinen
beyond
inviertan
education.
de manera
So the
conjunta
different sectors need to coordinate
sobre
their
estos
work and invest
desafíos. Y por
together
último, las
to
dimensiones de política
overcome these
educativa más
challenges. And
estructurales,
finally,
diría
the
yo,
more
que tienen que ver
structural
justamente con,
educational
cuando
policy
digo la
dimensions
inversión, justamente
that
me
are
refiero a cómo
related to the
a
necessary
preguntarnos cómo estamos
investments.
invirtiendo
And
o
that
cuáles
means
son nuestros
asking
sistemas de
ourselves where we are
financiamiento
investing, what are our
efectivamente para tener
financing systems
centros educativos
to be able to
que cuenten con
have
la infraestructura
educational
necesaria, que
centers with
cuenten con la
the
dotación
necessary
docente, etcétera. Ahí hay un
infrastructure,
tema
with
de
enough
financiamiento que es
teachers,
clave
etc. And
al respecto,
financing there
así como
is
también es
key.
clave la institucionalidad
And
y los
also the
marcos
institutional
regulatorios
framework and the
de nuestro
regulatory
sistema.
framework, those
Entonces,
also play a key role
obviamente
in our system.
hay distintos
So of
desafíos a
course,
distinto
there are
nivel.
many
La pregunta es,
challenges at
¿en qué
different
momento
levels.
estamos hoy
So the
día? ¿Cómo
question
consideran
is where
ustedes
we
hoy
are
día que
at
estamos
now, in your
desde
opinion.
sus países? Esa es la
Where do you
invitación a que
think your
conversemos hoy
countries
día
are? And
para poder
that's the
justamente
invitation
setear
for
este
today's
punto de partida y
discussion
que
to be able
como
to
decíamos,
set this
empecemos a
starting
buscar
point
nuestras propias
and
soluciones
start
desde,
looking
desde
for
abajo.
our
Nosotros
own
decimos desde el
solutions
bottom-up approach, que sería
uh,
como una
with
perspectiva
a
de trabajar
bottom-up
desde las
approach,
prioridades
right? Which
nacionales, desde el
means
momento, que las
starting from
necesidades
the
que cada uno
national
de
priorities, from
ustedes va relevando de los países,
the needs
para entonces
every one
dar
of you
luego
can
un
share
paso
from
siguiente
your
donde
country, and then
movilizamos
take the next
conocimiento,
step
expertise
and
que apoye
mobilize knowledge and
justamente a
expertise
abordar este camino de manera
to be able
conjunta,
to address the
nacional,
path
regional y
together
global,
at the
como lo
national,
planteamos.
regional, and global level, as
Por
was mentioned.
último, el tema de la institucionalidad,
And
decía,
lastly, talking about that institutional
y los marcos
framework
regulatorios son
and
centrales al
regulatory
momento
frameworks, those are also
de
critical
asegurar el
to
derecho a la educación
ensure
para niños
the
y
right
niñas
to
más
education
pequeños. Es
for younger
precisamente ese
children.
el gran esfuerzo al
And
que estamos
that's the
convocados
main
para generar
effort
también las
behind our
transiciones
work
necesarias desde el
to be
punto de
able
vista
to
de trayectoria
facilitate the
educativa.
transitions when
Entonces,
it comes to
con
a
esta
learning
introducción queremos
trajectory.
irnos a trabajar.
So with this introduction, we would like to
De manera
start the
anticipada
work.
que el
I would like
segundo
to
momento
say that
tendrá más foco en lo que
on
decía
the
el
second
subciclo
conversation,
2
we
que
will
comentábamos,
focus on the
que tiene que
second
ver con
subcycle we
justamente
mentioned
los estándares, marcos
that has to
curriculares,
do with
sistemas de evaluación,
standards,
de aprendizaje,
curriculum frameworks,
el
assessment
desarrollo
systems,
docente, entre
learning
otros. Entonces, en
systems,
esta primera
teacher
oportunidad queremos
development,
enfocarnos en
etc. But
en estas
for this
dimensiones
first
más
discussion, we would
estructurales
like
y
to
luego,
focus on these more
seguramente,
structural
las más de
dimensions
desarrollo
and then
educativo propiamente
talk
tal,
about
a nivel de sala de clase, a
educational
nivel de
development, everything
desarrollo
related to the
docente y
classroom,
marcos curriculares.
teacher training, and
Eso, Mar,
curriculum.
yo creo que
So,
con eso
Matt, I
podemos dar las
think
indicaciones
with
para
that,
hacer el
we
trabajo
can get to the
de
instructions to
manera
start the
breakout
work
rooms
in our
en
breakout
sala,
rooms.
Cristina.
Claro que sí, Raúl. Bueno, con esta
Of
introducción que nos
course,
da Raúl
Raul.
en
So
mente,
after
vamos a
Raul's
pasar a dividirnos en dos
introduction, now
grupos
we're
de
going to
trabajo.
be
En esta
splitting
sala donde están,
our
que contarán con traducción
members
simultánea,
into two
se van
rooms.
a quedar
We will
los
have
angloparlantes y los francófonos,
interpretation
es
in the
decir, los
English
participantes de
and
Haití,
French-speaking
Guyana, Saint
room.
Lucia,
People
Grenada,
from
Dominique,
Haiti,
Saint Vincent y
Guyana,
Grenadines.
Saint
Aquí va
Lucia,
a estar
Grenada,
Raúl,
Dominican, Saint
Germain
Vincent.
Anthony y Pedro
Raul will
Ramírez
stay here.
facilitando esta conversación. Y
Pedro
para
and
todos los
Germain, they will be the
hispanoparlantes que en este
facilitators. And for
momento ya
those
han
of you who
podido
speak
activar
Spanish,
la sala
you should see
español,
the room
nos
already
vamos a
enabled,
trasladar
the
hacia allá.
Spanish room, and
Representantes de
we all are
Honduras,
going to move
Nicaragua, El
there. Those
Salvador,
came
nuestros
from
colegas de los
Honduras,
proyectos de
Nicaragua, El
investigación aplicada
Salvador,
de KIX, les
and the
pedimos
colleagues
que
of the
empiecen
applied
a
research
pasarse para esa
projects
sala
of
y
KIX.
ahí vamos a
Please
estar
move to that
moderando esa
Spanish
conversación
room,
Rosa María y
and
Catalina.
Rosa Maria and Catalina
Vamos a
will be
tener
moderating that
una primera
conversation.
conversación de 30
So we will
minutos
have
y
a
luego vamos a
30-minute
volver a una
discussion,
plenaria
and
de
then
15
we will
minutos.
come back to a
Entonces,
plenary
les
session for
pido, por
15
favor,
minutes. So
que
please
vayamos trasladándonos hacia la
move
sala de español.
to the Spanish room if you are a Spanish speaker.
Hi, Jermaine.
Yes, hello, Rahul. I'm still here in the English room.
Excellent. Yes, so we're going to stay here together, facilitating this space.
Yes.
It would be great, I think, also if you can introduce yourself for those that maybe haven't met you before.
Yes, certainly. I don't know why, but my camera seems to be turning itself off.
Now it's working.
I don't know, it keeps going back off. Anyways, folks,
Yeah, maybe you prefer to still we have some people that maybe is doing. No, I think we're ready here.
okay. No, yeah, we might as well get started with the introduction. So,
Yes.
my name is Jermaine Anthony. I am a Senior Technical Specialist in Education at the Education Development Management Unit in the OECS Commission. And of course, we're doing well. I am helping to coordinate a lot of the inclusive education programming from the OECS side in collaboration with UNICEF. And under that umbrella, of course, is early childhood education and a very close associated area is special education needs. So that is part of my remit. So good to meet all of you. Back to you, Rahul.
Thank you, Jermaine. I'm gonna there are some colleagues that maybe are still would like to go to the Spanish. Solo para información a las y los colegas que quieran
Just to
estar
provide some information
No
to
logro
those
cambiarlo.
colleagues. Yes, I
¿Ves?
wasn't able
Hay
to
una
choose the
opción
room.
abajo que dice Breakout
All right,
Room
there's an
o
option at
debería
the
decir
bottom that
sala
says
y ahí puede
breakout room or
unirse a la sala de
sala,
español. Hay dos
and
salas.
you
Hay un
should
grupo,
click there on joining the Spanish
no sé
room.
si, Ileana, ¿ves esa opción?
Do you see that option, Ileana?
Por el momento quiero introducirlos con
So
Pedro.
for now, I'd like to
Pedro Garret.
introduce
Si te quieres
Pedro
presentar, Pedro.
Garret.
Pedro va a estar
Maybe you would like to
tomando
introduce yourself. Pedro,
las
he's going
notas
to be taking notes
en un link que les vamos a compartir. Pedro, ¿quieres
through a
comentar
link that we are going to be sharing with you. Pedro, would you like to
el
tell our
ejercicio que
colleagues a
vamos a
little
hacer
more
para
about
poder ir
the
dialogando
next
respecto a estas
exercise so we can start the
prioridades y desafíos?
conversation on these priorities and challenges?
Muchas gracias, Raúl. Thank you so much,
Thank-
Raúl, and it's a pleasure to be here with all you. Well, I'm Pedro Garret. I'm recently joined SUMA KIX LAC team as a research and project coordinator, and it's a pleasure to be here with you in this annual meeting. Bueno, Raúl, sí, efectivamente vamos a tener una
Right,
una
Raul,
actividad.
we are going
En estos
to be
momentos les
having
estamos compartiendo
this activity.
un link
I'm now
por
sharing
el
a
chat
link
de la
through
plataforma.
the chat.
Sorry,
Eh,
Pedro, sorry. Maybe we should just speak in English.
okay.
Yeah, so because here is the room for the English speaking
Okay,
country.
Raúl, no problem. So, well, we are sharing a link to a PowerPoint in the chat of the Zoom meeting. So, the idea is that, well, you can join that PPT and then Raul will send the instructions and asking some questions to you in order to have some answers to these questions in order to resolve some of the topics related to early childhood. So I'm gonna share my, in this case, my window. So if you can confirm, you can see the PPT.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we see
Okay,
this.
so Raul, maybe we can start with the first moment of this activity.
Perfect. So here, colleagues, we have the four main topics that we are identifying as the most structural issues. I would like to ask you, Jermaine, as a first maybe introduction to the Caribbean reality. On the challenges of early childhood education regarding the intersectoral collaboration, probably the regional diagnosis that you're currently discussing. Also, I know there is a group of early childhood specialists that are currently in this kind of discussions as well. Please, could you give a brief contextualization?
Okay, well, thanks for that, Rahul. So as Rahul mentioned, colleagues, we have a regional grouping of OECS ECE leaders, early childhood development leaders, and we would tend to have, as resources are available, to have a face-to-face gathering every year. This year, however, we did opt out of the face-to-face meeting. We instead have opted for 2 virtual meetings. At these meetings, of course, we discuss challenges, issues, priorities for ECE, ECD, and SEN. We've combined that grouping on a regional level, and we try to identify what are the major national priorities and how we can tackle specific priorities on a regional level. The context is, I guess I can summarize it as that being one of lack of access, and that is one of the major areas we're trying to tackle. And that is, of course, within the scope of our OECS education sector strategy. So we're trying to tackle the issue of access and to ensure that every child has a good start within the early childhood sector. We do recognize that through, you may say, the cultural context itself, not many young, well, between the ages of 0 to 2, not many families are accessing early childhood services simply because they may have a preference or the situation doesn't permit them to leave a young, very, very young child at a facility that they feel comfortable or is convenient for them. We tend to see access to early childhood services and care centers happening at a later stage, 3, 4, and 5. We are also concerned about the degree of, in terms of the quality of many of the early childhood centers. And that is because many of the existing care centers and facilities are privately operated. Some of them almost emerge organically, you might say. And so they're not, in some instances, well regulated. And the region, across the region, some are a little more advanced than others, but there has been this impetus in developing standards for the operation of these daycare and preschools. So as I mentioned, there's some countries that are further ahead have gone forward with there, including, for example, the 0 to 5 age group in the education policy. And of course, some are still not at that level. So what we try to do is to, as a regional grouping, try to share best practices, try to leverage our collective power as an OECS to provide sometimes training support as well as material support and even infrastructural support where the resources are available. So you may have heard of the OECS Pearl, and that is one of the right now one of the projects that has been serving at least some of the OECS member states in developing early childhood and special education needs training, curriculum development, as well as providing material, ECE spaces, refurbishment, and that kind of support. So I hope I've been able to capture most of what the context is like. And one, or I should mention, definitely the training of practitioners and administrators is another key priority for us because, of course, many of our privately run facilities are not able to necessarily recruit the best qualified personnel. So professional development training is very much key in ensuring that families are accessing not just a space, but a quality service. Over to you.
Excellent. Yes, yes. As we said, probably there are some topics that also we will be discussing in the second moment regarding the professional development also. But thank you so much for the contextualization, colleagues. This is a moment where we would like to hear from you. That's is very important to know how do you see this main the situation of the early childhood education and care in your countries. So please, we would like to hear from you as well. Is it a relevant issue? I imagine, but for everyone, but maybe a good starting point is the diagnostic that you are doing these days. I see. Well, different. All the countries represented here. Saint Lucia, Grenada. I see that just Dominic joined the Jeremy as the CEO of Grenada. Nice meeting you again, Dominic. But yeah, I see many of you. Please, we would like to hear. Who would like to start? Judy Ann, I see you here. We're fairly. Yeah, who is someone open the microphone. Don't be shy, please.
Good morning. Wifuli Dominica.
Hi, we're fairly
Yeah.
nice meeting you.
I think Dominica has made great strides where early childhood is concerned, and in terms of access. And my knowledge is kind of limited, and so Vida is there, who is the coordinator of the early childhood, and she's able to give more information on that. But I know Dominica has been great strides where early childhood is concerned. So Vida, you can take it from there.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Wifoli. Yes, I'm happy to report on behalf of Dominica to speak about our developments, but to also highlight our challenges. As Jermaine has already indicated, we do have difficulty in creating access for the 0 to 2 cohort. So for us in Dominica, we have made great strides, but we have created more access for the 3 to 5 than for the 0 to 2. So our challenge still remains with the 0 to 2 cohort. So for example, while we may have about 31 government-owned preschools, we have no government-owned daycare center. We do have an early stimulation program, which is a roving caregivers program, but it is not skilled, and it is practiced only, in one parish of Dominica. Well, we can say now that 61% of all our government-owned primary schools now have pre-kindergarten, which is good for us. We have, in terms of professional in development and training, we do have a 2-year program at the University of the West Indies. So our caregivers, practitioners do have access to formal training. We work very closely with the Ministry of Health under the primary health care, where we have our nurse practitioners going into the institutions and monitoring growth and development of our children. And we work with social services when it comes to the social well-being of our children. Most of our teachers in the government-owned pre-kindergartens are paid by government. However, the salary is less compared to those in the primary section, and that is creating a problem. Well, we know worldwide, there is an issue in how we view early childhood educators, and the pay varies, you understand? Some people don't see it as a profession while others do. I can say, though, that there is political buy-in, and right now we are working towards resolving that issue and ensuring that there is consistency in pay. But we know it's a process, but at least it has started. So we are hoping that something positive will come out of it.
Thank you so much, Vida.
In terms of collaboration, well, I must highlight the contributions of UNICEF, which has always been a partner with us in early childhood. Recently, we had the support of the Maria Holder Foundation from Barbados in helping us to construct 7 new pre-kindergartens. Right now, we have 5 primary schools that are being constructed under the collaboration between the China the government of China and Dominica, and each of them will have a pre-kindergarten attached to it. And of course, OECS is always there. So even now under the Pearl Initiative, we are refurbishing 5 of our already existing centers to ensure that they meet more and more standards.
I wanted to ask you a bit about the if you see any challenge on the intersectoral collaboration.
Yes, we once had a council on early childhood, and for a number of years now, we have been trying to reestablish the council because we have made strides in the Ministry of Education, and so there is need for revising what existed. I can tell you when in the first model, we had a number of private organizations that were represented on the council, but these organizations no longer exist. And so it warrants us revising the structure, revising the terms of reference, and coming up with something new. At the time when the council was established, we also did not have the early childhood unit. So now within the Ministry of Education, there is an early childhood unit. I am the coordinator, and it makes provision for 2 other officers. And so all that needs to be taken into consideration. And as I noted earlier, we have the pre-kindergartens that are now attached to the primary schools. So while we give oversight to the pre-kindergartens, there is another officer who gives oversight to the children from 5 years when they begin, well, what we consider formal education. And I think even that we need to change, because I say, you know, in agriculture, we ensure that the seed is good and the soil is fertile. But when it comes to human development, we start somewhere in the middle and not really at the beginning. So I think all that, you know, it calls for, you know, the whole view of how we see early childhood and everything. So we have had a challenge in really constituting the early childhood council. So this is where we are.
Excellent.
15 minutes left.
Thank you so much, Vida.
Is somebody asking a question?
No, they were saying that we have 15 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
More. It's fine. Well, yeah, it would be great to hear from another experience. Maybe Grenada, St. Vincent, Grenadines. I see a lot of colleagues from St. Lucia as well.
Good morning.
Raul, can I say, I talk about what I knew from the early childhood in Guyana, but I don't know a lot because early childhood is not my area. But
Okay.
we were fortunate enough, and this is a long time in coming, where I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to move forward quickly. Where
Well,
the
please, could you
Honolulu.
introduce yourself, Charmaine, so
Oh,
everyone
sorry.
know you.
I'm Dr. Charmaine Bisessa. I am the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the University of Guyana. I am actually Trinidadian, though. I'm also affiliated with the Faculty of Education and Humanities. So we built from a loan from the CBD, a huge early childhood center. And what we are doing right now is a lot of the staff of the university and outside persons as well, their children attend that center. What has transpired as a result of that center is that it's a pity my dean is not here, but they found that they belong to a particular group and they do a lot of research every year, and they have a certain amount of research that comes out of that early childhood center per year, and it's really, really good. We at the university also offer the bachelor's in early childhood to the teachers. We also offer the master's, and I do supervise the master's thesis with the early childhood. But I don't know, Raul, if you want me to say anything, if you can ask me any question, I can respond.
Maybe since you're talking a bit about Guyana, maybe to what extent do you see that this is today an actual priority? If there are the investments needed, or there is a challenge in that sense as well?
Okay, I think right now, they have invested heavily in it, and we are getting our rewards. It is doing very well. And in fact, yeah. So I don't see challenges from my perspective, but what we do have a deficit of, and that's what we're trying to fill right now, the university is trained early childhood educators. And we're trying to fill that niche right now. So that's what I see from my perspective, but I have limited experience. So thank you very much, Raul.
Thank you so much, Charmaine, for sharing the Guyana's experience as well. Yes.
Raul,
Good morning.
sorry, I know we have very little time, but I just wanted to plug in that Dominica gives a monetary assistance. The government gives a monetary assistance to each of our registered early childhood center on the island. So whether it's government or private, they do get monetary assistance every term.
Okay, perfect, Vida. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the Dominican experience.
Hi, good morning. I will just pitch in quickly. My colleagues I'm Tracy Dolce. Hi, everybody from
Hi,
St.
Tracy.
Lucia. I'm a planning officer. On the call as well is my colleague, Miss Onika Bed, who is also a planning officer, Miss Zephrina Lancico, who is the early childhood coordinator. And we also have, I think, Miss Rose is there as well, who is with early childhood. So I'm thinking, colleagues, we can do a joint pitch in quickly on the St. Lucia context. As it pertains to
Excuse
St.
Miss
Lucia.
Dolce, Miss
Yes.
Didoni is on as well, our Chief
Okay, so
Education.
our Chief Education Officer is on. So we can do a joint. So if I'm missing out anything or anything needs to be pointed out, I know my colleagues will pitch in. But just to note that our presence here shows how significant early childhood is as a priority for St. Lucia. We have been trying our best through our collaboration with UNICEF as well as the OECS to try to enhance our early childhood sector. At present, we have 36 daycare centers, of which 24, the majority are government owned. The majority of our preschools, however, are private. And as Jermaine mentioned, that is where the challenge comes in terms of regulating that sector. So we do not have regulated fees. So there is sometimes some measure of inequity. We are trying to achieve universal early childhood. That is a major priority under our recently developed education sector development plan. Universal early childhood is a priority. However, it will take us a little while to get there through the Pearl Project as well as through the Caribbean Central Bank BNTF Basic Needs Trust Fund project. We have instituted some pre-K programs in a few of our primary schools. There are 9 at present. Yes, there are 9 of these programs at 9 of our primary schools. We are hoping to expand to more. We're also trying to see how best we have an early childhood policy in St. Lucia that was developed in 2013. We have our regulations and standards. Miss Lancico, is it? That is, we have with our Attorney General Chambers, but this may need revisiting. We are trying to see how we can integrate ICT greater in the sector. In terms of cross-sectoral collaborations, we are looking how we can make the sector more climate resilient. So in terms of presently, we are working on developing our education sectoral adaptation plan, our education SASAP, and early childhood is one of the areas being considered within that process so that we can make our centers more climate resilient as well as inclusive, especially as it pertains to special needs education. We know the need for early intervention is critical, and for that, we're trying to see how best we can train our teachers. As Jermaine alluded to, a lot of the personnel in early childhood, especially at the private centers, are not very qualified. We recently passed our minimum wage bill, which will benefit this sector. However, they're still grossly underpaid. So attracting the best and finest of minds in that sector is not always doable, given that the compensation does not equate the the qualifications. However, through our pre-K programs, we do have qualified teachers teaching those programs, and we are working assiduously to see what we can do, or we do partner with Ministry of Health as well. The Ministry of Health, for instance, when it comes to going through our schools to do the assessment of the centers, the environmental unit helps us with that to ensure that they meet the minimum requirements. But of course, some of the centers, the standard is low, and there is still some work to be done. I'll hand over to Ms. Lancico. I know I've said a lot, but Ms. Lancico, anything that we might have missed?
We also partner with the fire department that goes in to ensure that the children are in the health and safety of the children are not compromised at the center. And to add to what Tracy said, in terms of quality early childhood education and care, most times when we have our training, it is for those centers that are public centers, government owned. And because of that, you find that our private centers, they do not get that training. So my team and I, we are looking to see how we could get some professional development training for the private center. Because if we want to have high quality care, it has to be throughout the sector. And it means that if they are not included, then the children who attend those centers would not be having high quality care. So this is one of the things that my team and I are working on so that all practitioners across the sector would have access to professional development training.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nancy Cott. Yeah, we will have more time to continue probably in the plenary as well, but it would be great to hear some initial contextualization of Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well.
Good morning. My
Good
name
morning.
is Ethne Williams. I'm the Senior Education Officer with responsibility for early childhood education in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Excellent.
In our context here, we have seen an increase in access to early childhood education. Our government has constructed 17 public early childhood center to date, and currently another center is being constructed. This is scheduled to be open in the new school year. In our public centers, we have trained teachers. However, in our private centers, the case is different, and the private sector is predominantly driving the early childhood education in our country. We have about 90 private centers. One of the problems that we are encountering is that when these teachers from the private sector go to the teachers' college, after they would have gained their qualifications, they do not go back to the private centers. They would seek employment at a public center or probably at the primary school, because at that time they have that qualifications to work at a primary school. So we are still experiencing some low quality in quite a number of our private centers. Most of the teachers there are untrained. However, we try our best to offer professional development training to them, and some of them, they would have access to that training. One of the things that we are currently doing is that we are training our teachers, both public and private sector, in ICT integration, because we would have had three major disasters recently. Well, we had the COVID, and then we had the volcanic eruption, and then we had Elsa, then we had our hurricane again this year, Beryl. So we are preparing our teachers to work in an emergency setting. So we would have trained about 50% of our teachers, both private and public sector, to work in an emergency setting, and we are continuing with this ICT integration, because one of the things that we found out, well, I guess for the other countries as well, when the COVID hit us, we were so much unprepared. Most of the information we had to use were not culturally relevant to our context. So we are currently developing content that would be culturally relevant for our children in the event that we would have to work online. In terms of intersectoral collaboration, we are working closely with the Ministry of Social Development and also with the Ministry of Health. Earlier this year for our Child Month celebration, we had an intersectoral approach where we had the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of National Mobilization, the Red Cross, the police, and even some business places coming together to celebrate Child Month and to speak to the public about what they are currently doing in terms of working with children. This was indeed a great success for us, and we are planning to take this intersectoral approach again next year. One of our other challenges is lack of trained teachers in special education in the early childhood sector. We are currently including children with special needs. We are currently enrolling them in our centers. However, most of our teachers are not trained to work with some of these children who may have a special disability. So sometimes while they are being enrolled, they are still excluded when they are in the classroom. So this is something we are going to work on, and we are supposed to be accessing some training for our teachers sometime next year in different fields in special education. So that would help to alleviate some of the problems we are facing in that particular area.
1 minute left.
Excuse me?
Oh, she said that we have 1 minute left.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Then in the
So
plenary.
I will wrap up right here. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will continue. I think we should we would like to hear from Grenada. Who could give us the review on the situation of early childhood in Grenada? Jermaine, I don't know if you see someone.
Let me see.
It was.
Do we have Grenada represented? I'm not seeing the full list.
Yeah, not at this time.
I see Alexis, but I believe Alexis to be a planner. I don't know. Oh, no, that's investing Grenada. I'm sorry. Sorry, Alexis.
Yes,
That's
Alex.
Grenada, sorry.
Yeah, but we will go to the main room and we will continue. We will continue to the discussion, and then we will go into the next discussion. So we will have the time to go in depth in some of these issues as well.
Okay.
I think we are ready now. Maybe.
Do we move now? Are we happy with what we're seeing on screen with the responses?
Yes, but let's wait our colleagues from Central America so we can give a brief overview on that on this discussion. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
So let me check. I think they are coming back. Yeah. Everyone is returning now.
Interesante ejercicio, Mar, que sentimos fue una carrera
It was
contra
an
el tiempo,
interesting exercise, Mar.
bueno,
We felt like we were
bueno,
running
esperanza
against
que vamos a
time,
tener más tiempo
but
en el siguiente,
we are
en la
hopeful
siguiente
to
vuelta.
have
Gracias.
more time on the
Muy
second
productivo, sí.
discussion. It was
Partimos
quite
entonces quizás
productive.
con una
All right, let
breve
us
overview,
start
una
then
síntesis de
with a brief
discutieron
overview, a summary
en el
of
room, en la sala de
what you
español.
discussed in the
Luego
Spanish
Germain acá va a
breakout
también dar
room, and then
una
Jermaine
pequeña
will tell
síntesis.
you a little about what we discussed.
Rosa María.
Rosa María.
Sí, gracias. Nosotros también vamos a tener
Yes,
una
of
pequeña
course.
síntesis y tenemos
We
a
will
Mariela
give you a
Celada
brief summary.
que nos va a apoyar. Gracias,
Mariela
Mariela.
Salat, my colleague, is going to be helping us with that.
Y no sé
And,
si
go ahead,
Katy
Mariela.
puede
Oh, and
proyectar.
maybe
Lo
Catalina
que
can
pidió
share
Mariela es que tuviéramos a la
the
vista, le pedimos
presentation because
muchísimas
Mariela asked
participaciones.
to be able to
Mariela,
see what we discussed because we
mucho gusto.
mentioned so
Necesitamos que
many
te
things.
presentes, por favor. Ya.
Mariela, please, if
Y
you can also
también
introduce
creo
yourself.
que por el tiempo, Raúl,
And
no
I
sé si
also
quieres
believe
que
that
nos
in
vayamos
honor
de
of
un solo
time, maybe
a
we
las
should
prácticas,
go
porque
straight to the
para poder
practices.
conversar.
Hagamos la
Sí.
síntesis breve y
Let's just
mostramos
have a
al
brief
siguiente
summary,
paso a la siguiente
and
discusión.
then we'll
¿Ya?
share
Gracias.
the presentation of the next discussion we are going to be having. All right, thank you.
Creo que sí pudimos tener nosotros participación de los 4
I
países.
think we were able to hear
Estaba
the 4
Honduras,
participating
Guatemala, Nicaragua
countries, Honduras,
y
Guatemala,
también teníamos
Nicaragua.
a la plana en educación, en educación preescolar o
And
primera
we
infancia de la
also
región. Así que
have representatives from early
fue
childhood
muy bueno,
education at the
realmente
regional level.
el
So I think it
intercambio.
was
Y
a
además
great
creemos
exchange.
que hay muchísima
And we also
experiencia, no
believe
solo
that
dentro de los
there
ministerios,
is so much
son los decanos, pero
experience,
también
not just within the
experiencias
ministries of education, but there
que
are
puedan
also
hablar de esa
various
articulación
experiences
entre los
that
diferentes
give us
organismos.
examples
Así
on
que
how we could do that coordination
eso,
that was so
eso fue
much
muy
need
bueno.
between the different institutions. And I think that
No
was great.
sé si vamos a poder,
I'm
Mariela,
not
lo que te
sure
prometí,
if
que no vas
we'll
a
be
poder tener
able to
todo,
do what I promised, Mariela, that
pero
you
creo
will,
que
we're going to be
ahí
able
nos
to
van a
read
compartirlo.
everything. Now I'm sharing the screen.
Perfecto, gracias. Ustedes me
Yes,
dicen,
great. Thank
¿puedo
you.
empezar
Just
ya?
let me know. Should I
Adelante,
start?
la
Yes, go
plataforma es
ahead.
tuya.
The platform
Bueno,
is yours.
brevemente, una discusión muy
All
rica,
right, so
creo yo que
briefly,
Mariela,
I
si te
think it was
presentas, por
quite a
favor,
rich conversation.
para que
Mariela,
escuche
sorry, if you
resto.
can
Gracias.
introduce yourself so
Claro,
everyone
claro,
knows
por
who you are.
supuesto, disculpen.
Of
Mariela
course, yes,
Celada,
my apologies.
soy
I'm
coordinadora de
Mariela
programas y
Celada. I'm
proyectos de la
the
Oficina
coordinator of
Nacional
programs
de
and
la
projects
OEI en
of the
Guatemala
National
y
Office
pues
of
muy contenta de estar
OEI
aquí
in
compartiendo con
Guatemala,
ustedes.
and I'm very pleased
Bueno,
to be
en
here
relación con
with
la
you.
discusión, creo
So
que
regarding the
algunos de los
discussion we
elementos que
had,
se
I
mencionaron
think some of the
como en
elements
relación con
that were
desafíos era
mentioned
un poco la
by
ausencia de una
participants
atención
when it comes to
integral, ¿verdad?
challenges, it was the lack
Generalmente
of
la
a
atención que se fija en el tema de
comprehensive
primera infancia es una
care.
atención
Usually, when we
fragmentada, ¿verdad?
think about
Hay
uh,
desafíos
early
relacionados con
childhood,
la formación
the efforts
docente,
are
¿verdad? En los
fragmented.
diferentes
There are
países,
challenges
desde
related to
la ausencia de
teacher
un currículo,
training
por
in the
ejemplo,
different
que desde la
countries. There
rectoría, por
is
ejemplo, en los
no
ministerios de educación
curriculum
pueda implementarse, pero
that
también
could
en la
be
formación inicial
implemented coming from the
quienes
Ministry of
tienen este nivel,
Education,
¿verdad?
but also for
Hablábamos
those
de
who work at this level.
vinculación o
We
un
were also
enfoque más
talking
centrado en el
about
cuidado,
an
en el
approach
aprendizaje en estos
that is
niveles.
more focused on
Y yo
caring
mencionaba
and
brevemente que
not
para el caso de Guatemala la
teaching
atención
for
está
these levels. And in
fragmentada
the
en
case
dos
of Guatemala, this
instancias
is
que tiene la rectoría a nivel
fragmented.
estatal. Entonces eso hace a
There
veces
are two
todavía más
different
complejo
agencies
la
in charge of
atención.
these topics,
Y
so that makes it
mencionamos
even more
también que la
complicated to
articulación entre
provide
diversos
care.
actores
And we
en la
also
región
talked about
sigue
the
siendo un
coordination
desafío
between different
importante, ¿verdad?
actors in the region that
Cómo
is continues
efectivamente
to be a challenge.
relevaba el tema de la
We
interculturalidad, de
talked
la
about
importancia de la atención a la diversidad
cultural practices, considering diversity, and how culture it's an element that needs to be considered to provide better care, but also how to increase our coverage at this level of education. And we also have a challenge how to get to those populations that are scattered and also cross-sectoral collaboration. How can we produce an effective dialogue, a coordination between the different programs, centers, and public agencies involved, and how to coordinate work with others, like municipalities or local governments, and others who also provide care for young children. Talking about the educational policy, the challenge is how to allocate investments and interventions, how to prioritize based on evidence and on data to have, because we don't have that much research. So how can we help that research to actually inform public policy decision making? And also the use of technology is still a challenge and a relevant dimension when it comes to developing a policy. And we also talked about how this fragmentation it makes it more difficult to have more comprehensive policies in place when it comes to early childhood care. So I would stop there. I hope I was able to summarize what the group discussed, but if not, please feel free to add anything you think might be needed. Yes, please, to those of you who are Spanish speakers, if you would like to add something, please do so. But thank you very much, Mariela, for that great summary.
Adelante, Mar. Yo creo que podemos continuar con Anglo.
Claro que
So,
sí,
Mar, I
Raúl.
think we can continue with the English
Germain,
speaking group. Of course, Raúl, Germain, the floor
¿quieres
is
darnos
yours.
un overview de la
Would
conversación
you
que se
like to give us an
tuvo
overview of the conversation
en su
you
grupo de
had
trabajo?
in your working group?
Yes, thank you. Jermaine, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
perfect.
you. Yes, so unfortunately, my camera is not staying on. Well, but there we go. So we had a lot of conversation, and again, it would not have been enough time to fully flesh out everything. But what we are hearing from the different countries, we've presented here on the screen. We tried to capture as much as we could. In relation to the relevance of early childhood education, it really is a critical step in the education process, of course. It's the very first and most critical stage of development. And we do recognize that we have issues of literacy and numeracy that propagate right through to the latter primary and secondary school years. And the number one way to address that, of course, is through proper and quality early childhood education. So that is important. In many ways, the early childhood centers act as a means of supporting broader child protection and health services. In a lot of ways, that is where some of the families and the children are accessed, where information is shared among among the parents, so that other services provided by other sectors can be made available to those children and their families. Speaking of which, school feeding in many ways is an access issue, in that low-income families may not be able to provide the necessary nutrition to their young learners, their young children, and through access especially at the public centers, this is made a little more accessible to these families, to their children. Under the matter of diagnosis, the regional diagnosis of national challenges, we've been able to list just 4 of the many challenges. And we've mentioned that many families have not or do not access early childhood services between the ages of 0 to 2. There needs to be maybe some more investigation as to why. Some of the indications are that the the families sometimes opt not to, even if they can, because they may not necessarily trust or have confidence in some of those services with their very, very young children. But of course, the jury's out. There needs to be more research done into that area. We are aware that many of the early childhood centers, daycares, and preschools are privately owned. And so governments across the region are making the effort. There has been a lot of progress in several of the member states, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Antigua. In fact, all over the Eastern Caribbean, where government, public assisted or public centers have increased access to early childhood. But in the meantime, where we're experiencing some challenges with low quality or issues with teachers who are not necessarily well qualified, are mainly in the privately owned centers, because of course they cannot necessarily afford the qualified ones. We have noted that there is an apparent increase in the number of young children who are displaying what we're calling autistic-like behaviors. We think there's an increase in autism or autistic-like behaviors among children, and that is obviously quite a challenge, especially when it comes to how you address the learning needs of such children. Also, it was mentioned by some of the member states that even after COVID, there were challenges with continuing the support and learning for children. And of course, the realization that there's a need for more culturally relevant content and activities for these early learners. Much of the material comes from, the more developed countries, the global north, and not necessarily contextually relevant to our region. Intersectoral collaboration, that has been by itself one of the main areas of focus, but it remains a challenge. Of course, it's important for us to coordinate the services provided by government and development partners, which can best happen through an intersectoral type of approach. So of course, that has to be strengthened. We need to be able to establish I would say the structural framework institution that is going to guide that in each of the countries, the coordinating body. So we have had some examples of success of that in the region, but not throughout. There's also a mention of integrating the integration of climate resilience and inclusivity in the early childhood sector. That is also very important. Over to policies, education policy. We recognize in some countries that there's still progress to be made with the Education Acts to update these to include early childhood from 0 to 5. In several of the member states, they would have had Education Acts that didn't necessarily speak to the provision of early childhood services before the age of 5. In Dominica, it's reported there are problems related to the payment of teachers. I suspect that might be more so towards the primary, not primary, sorry, the private sectors or the private centers. And finally, while there has been progress made, there's still a lot of road ahead for us to reach the goal of establish and enforce compliance standards and regulations for many of the early childhood centers. As the number of public assisted and public childhood centers increase, of course, that helps to improve the regulations, the adoption of the regulations. But because of the prevalence of private institutions, that remains a challenge. And governments continue to work with these providers. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jermaine. Rosa.
Gracias, Mar, por darme la oportunidad.
Thank you for
Para el
giving
KIX
the opportunity, and for
sumamente
KIX,
importante
it is
dedicar el día de
very
hoy a primera
important to be
infancia
able to
y
dedicate
también
this
el
time to
próximo
early
subciclo
childhood
de
and the next
intercambio de
subcycle of
conocimiento.
exchange of knowledge as well. knowledge exchange. And we are very proud to say that this has a big commitment and of the children, the Secretariat of Children in Honduras. And we would like to present the Minister, Lizeth Huello, and I would like for her to present herself. But I would like to say that we know the commitment from the Secretariat, and it is, we are very proud to be able to have her here. Please, Minister, present yourself and give us a quick message.
Bueno, muchísimas
Well,
gracias.
thank you
Perdón
very
por la
much.
llegada así,
I am
pero en
sorry for
realidad
just arriving
considero
like
un
this, but
tipo
I
de
do
suerte
consider that this
o
is
conjunción del
a
destino, las estrellas,
destiny,
etcétera,
basically, the
poder
stars
participar en este
aligned to be
espacio
able
que
to
me parece muy
participate in this short
importante,
space that I think that is very
sobre todo
important.
porque, y estaba viendo los
And
retos
we were
ahí que
seeing now
acaban
the
de exponer,
challenges that you just
todo el
exposed,
tema de, digamos, de
everything having to
investigación y de
do with the
articulación de
research and
acuerdo a lo que vamos
articulation
encontrando en
according to
primera
what we are
infancia.
finding in early
Todavía tenemos una
childhood.
tarea
We still
pendiente
have something that is
y ahora
pending.
como secretaría
And
quiero decirles
as a
rápidamente
secretariat, I
desde el
would like to
gobierno de la
quickly
presidenta
state that in
Xiomara
the
Castro, que es
government
la
of
primera mujer
the
presidenta en nuestro
president, our
país,
first lady
pues
president in our
se crea
country,
la
we
Secretaría de Niñez,
create the
Adolescencia y
Secretariat
Familia,
of
que es
Children,
la oportunidad
Teenagers,
histórica para
and
relevar el
Family, which
tema
is
de
something
niñez a la
historical to be able to
agenda
talk
de
about
lo
childhood
que
and
es el
add it to the
gabinete del
agenda
gobierno, ¿verdad? Y
of
entonces
the
que preside ella como
cabinet
presidenta. Entonces
that
esa
she
es una
presides. So
oportunidad,
this is an
reitero, de
opportunity that I would like
relevar
to
a la
repeat to be
agenda
able to
las
add it to
discusiones
the
sobre
agenda
una
and have
triste
this
realidad
discussion regarding a
de los
sad
niños y las niñas
reality
en el
of the
país que
children
constituyen
in the
el
country
3
that constitute
constituyen 3.2 millones
to
en el
3.2
marco de 10
million
millones
in the
de
frame
habitantes que
of a
somos en
10
Honduras,
million
más o menos andamos en
inhabitants
un
of
32
Honduras.
o
It's about 30
35%.
to
Entonces,
35%.
esta secretaría
So
pues
this
no es, o más
secretariat
bien
is
tiene una responsabilidad
has the
en políticas
responsibility
públicas,
in
en
public
garantía de
policy
derechos,
and
pero
guarantee of
también
rights,
la
but
de responder
also
frente a
the to be
vulneraciones.
able to respond in case
Recién
of
se
any
creó en
vulneration.
este
So we just
año,
created it this year.
el 3 de enero.
And,
He
January
sido nombrada
3rd,
ministra,
I have been named
igual,
minister,
primera, pues si
and
existe por primera vez la secretaría.
since this is the
He
first time the
asumido con
secretariat
suma
exists, I have
responsabilidad
come on
este cargo, este
with a lot
honor
of
y sobre todo
responsibility. It
este
is an
reto y
honor,
desafío
and
para
this
con
is
los
a
niños y las niñas en
challenge
Honduras. Yo
for the
vengo de
children
trabajar
of
por más de
Honduras. I come for
35
working
años
over 30
en derechos de
years
niñez,
in
pero desde
children's rights,
organizaciones de
but
sociedad
from
civil. He tenido la oportunidad de
social,
estar en
civil,
espacios nacionales e
uh,
internacionales
have different
en la defensa y
social
promoción de
groups
derechos
or
de
with
niñez
different
y de
groups or the
diferentes
promoting the rights of the
situaciones, ¿verdad?
children in
Como,
different
por ejemplo,
situations. Like,
discapacidad,
for example, if they have any
violación
kind
de
of
la ley,
disability or in
adicciones,
anything
etcétera.
having to do with the law
Entonces,
or any kind of
el
addiction.
tema
So,
particularmente
in
de primera infancia es
particular,
un gran
having to
reto
do with
para
early
esta secretaría
childhood
y por
is
eso
a big
estamos queriendo
challenge
alcanzar
for the
todas las
Secretariat.
oportunidades
So, we
de
would like
espacios
to be able
como
to reach
este
every
que nos
space we
permitan
have in
generar
spaces like these
capacidades
that allow us
institucionales porque
to
imagínense
show
el reto
the
de crear una
um,
secretaría, o sea,
opportunities of
todavía
spaces like
me
this that allow us
pregunto,
to generate capabilities
afortunadamente tenemos un
institutionally
equipo de
speaking, and it
profesionales de
we
alto
have a group
perfil que
of
están construyendo
professionals that are high
y a
profile
la
that
vez de
are building,
construir
and at the
ir
same time as they are
enfrentando
building,
las
they're
realidades,
also tackling
particularmente
the
en primera
realities, and
infancia. Hay un
especially
tema que
in
nos
early
importa
childhood, there
mucho,
is something
además de
that
los aspectos de
is very important for us
salud,
other than just health
vacunación,
and
lactancia materna,
vaccination and
estimulación
um,
temprana, vinculado a la educación, que
breastfeeding.
es
There are different things having to do
el preescolar,
with
el
this that is
aplazamiento
also
escolar
preschool to be able to have that available,
el
and
prekinder,
also
digamos
have
así.
pre-kinder,
Entonces,
as we
bueno,
say.
es toda una historia
Look it.
y pudiéramos
And
conversar en otro
if
detalle,
we
no quiero
could
abusar de
talk
ustedes
into
más,
more detail, I don't want
agradecerles
to take on too much
y
time, but I would
estamos a
like to
la
thank
orden.
you.
Muchísimo
And we
gusto,
are here
muy
available
buen
in
día.
case you need anything. Thank you
Gracias,
very
señora
much.
ministra. Nosotros estamos
Thank
en
you,
KIX,
Minister. We in
está en
KIX
Honduras y tenemos
are in
representación
Honduras, and we
aquí
have
permanente.
representation
Así
here,
que vamos a seguir coordinando. Muchísimas
and we will
gracias.
continue
A ustedes,
coordinating.
buen
Thank
día.
you.
Y voy
Thank
a
you very
continuar.
much. And I will continue
Muchas
connected.
gracias,
Thank you very
ministra.
much,
Bueno,
Minister.
ya teniendo esta plenaria, ahora
Having
queremos
this
invitarlos a este
information, now we would
segundo
like
momento,
to
a un
continue
segundo
to this
bloque
second
temático donde Raúl
point,
también nos dará
where
una
Raúl is
visión
also going to give us a
conceptual
vision
sobre lo que será la
regarding
segunda línea de
the second
profundización. Aquí
line that we want to go
temas de
deeper
calidad,
into.
mejoras de prácticas
So we are
educativas en la
going to
primera
go with the
infancia,
practices
también
in
explorar algunos
uh,
desafíos de los
early childhood and
estándares de
also some
calidad,
challenges of
marcos
the quality
curriculares,
standards,
prácticas
curriculum
pedagógicas
frameworks,
efectivas,
pedagogical
desarrollo
practices that are
profesional docente, que
effective,
ya algunos lo
teacher
plantearon
training
en
programs that some of you have
el
already
momento anterior,
mentioned
y
and
obviamente temas
previously,
de
and
transición,
also the
alfabetización
transition
temprana
and
y monitoreo y
literacy and
evaluación. Así que
monitoring
vamos a
and
tener
other things as
nuevamente
well. So we are
este
now going
ejercicio.
to
Raúl
have this
presenta,
exercise.
nos
Raul will
subdividimos
present.
nuevamente
We
y volvemos
subdivide
a
once again
plenario.
and we come
Raúl.
back to the plenary in a few
Muchas
minutes.
gracias, Mar.
Raul, thank you
Muchas
very
gracias,
much,
ministra,
Mad.
también por sus
Thank you
palabras. Creo que
for your
es un honor para
words.
nosotros
I
también
think it's an honor for us
tenerla
to
presente,
have you here,
entendiendo que el
understanding
desafío de la
that the
educación en primera
challenge
infancia es un desafío intersectorial y que tiene que
is
ser
a
asumido
cross
desde el
section
más alto nivel
and it has
de
to
los
be the
países.
highest
Yo había
level in the
comentado en la
countries,
primera,
and I had
en la primera
commented in the
parte
first part
de la discusión que el
of this
caso de El Salvador
discussion.
había
In
sido
the case of
también
El
un plan en ese
Salvador had
sentido, dado
also
que
been an
viene
example in that
la
sense,
política
since
de
it
primera
comes
infancia
with
impulsada
the policy of
desde lo
early
más
child that
alto
is being pushed
del
from the
gobierno
highest
en este
level of the
caso.
government in this
Entonces, lo
case.
mismo, agradecer su
And the
presencia
same, I would
porque
like to
también
thank
da
you for your
cuenta de
presence
que
because it also
efectivamente
shows that
la prioridad
effectively
tiene que
the
verse
priority has
reflejada
to
en la
do and
creación de
has to be
institucionalidad, por
reflective.
ejemplo, que es algo que estábamos discutiendo
It's something that
hace
we
un
have
minuto
to
atrás,
discuss a few
así
minutes
como los
ago,
marcos
and as
regulatorios
the
que la
regulation
promueven y
frameworks
el
that are
financiamiento, por
promoted
supuesto,
and
necesario para
financing that is
impulsar
necessary
esta
to be
educación.
able to drive this.
Sin más, voy
And
brevemente a
without
mencionar
more
los
ado, I
temas
would like to
que
briefly
seguimos
just
entrando. Hay una
mention the
distinción
issues that we are
analítica que vamos
talking
haciendo, por
about.
supuesto que
There
hay temas
is
que ya
a
aparecieron
distinction.
antes
There are things that have
y sobre los cuales
appeared
podemos seguir
previously and that we
conversando
can
y
continue
profundizando
talking
para
about and
conocer
going
más
deeper
la
into to
situación
be able
actual
to
en la
get
que
to
nos
know the current
encontramos y ver cómo
situation
podemos buscar
that exists
respuestas
now and how we can find
alternativas,
answers,
innovaciones que puedan
alternatives,
aportar a los
innovations that
desarrollos
can
internos de los
contribute to the
países.
internal
Por un lado,
development of these
por
countries.
supuesto,
And on
al
one hand,
centro
of
siempre de
course,
nuestros
in the
sistemas educativos
center
tenemos los
of our
marcos
educational
curriculares y
centers, we
entonces
have the
ahí la
curriculum
discusión es
frameworks, and therefore
sumamente
we have the
relevante a
discussion
partir del
in that area that
reconocimiento
is
de
very
las
important in
particularidades
the
del nivel
awareness and the
preescolar,
particularities of
parvulario y de
preschool and
educación inicial,
initial
que no es lo mismo
education,
exactamente que el
and
sistema
that
de
is not
educación
the
primaria y
same
secundaria.
as
Por
primary
supuesto
and
que
secondary education.
hay una mirada de trayectoria, pero
There
las
is a
particularidades
trajectory
son muy
point of view, but the
importantes
points of
y es
view,
parte de lo que
the
queremos también
particularities are
reconocer. ¿Hay
different.
brechas ahí o no hay
There's
brechas en sus
also
países desde el
gaps,
punto
or
de
are
vista
there
de la
not
generación
gaps
de
in their
marcos
in your
curriculares
countries having to do
específicos
with
para
these
el grupo de
curriculums?
0 a 2 o de 3 y
For the group
4,
from
5 y 6? Por
0
supuesto que
to
son
2,
especificidades
3
que hay
to
que ir
4,
desarrollando.
5, the
Lo
different
mismo en lo referido a
ages,
las prácticas
and the same things that we
pedagógicas y al
have
desarrollo
regarding
profesional docente.
pedagogical
Por
and the
un
teacher
lado,
training program,
reconocer la importancia, ya se
and also to
discutía
recognize the
en los grupos
importance, as
también,
what we had mentioned
la
previously,
relevancia
the
de la formación
relevance of
inicial y
the
la
initial
docente. Por lo
teacher
tanto, formar a
training,
las
uh, uh,
futuras educadoras
training the future
de los niños y
educators of
niñas
these
más
children,
pequeños.
these
También
smaller, younger
en la
children,
formación
and
continua,
also in
formación permanente,
continuous training, permanent
la
training.
lógica del desarrollo
And this is the
profesional
logic of the
continuo, el
professional development,
perfeccionamiento continuo.
this
Pero al mismo
constant
tiempo mirando
training.
también las
And at the
prácticas
same
efectivas,
time, we
lo
are
que la
also looking at
evidencia nos
effective
empieza a
practices. What
mostrar desde el
has the
punto de
evidence
vista
shown us
de
from the
qué
point
es
of
lo que
view
hay que
of
desarrollar
what
como
do we
prácticas
need to
pedagógicas.
develop as
Ahí,
pedagogical
bueno, ustedes saben
practices?
que
And
vamos
you
a
also
profundizar
know that
durante el
we are
ciclo,
also
durante
going
todo
to
el
go
próximo año,
deeper
por
within the
supuesto,
cycle of the
nuestros
next year.
partners
And we are going to
aliados
show that our partners and
del
allies
Reino Unido, el
of the
Education
United
Endowment
Kingdom and
Foundation,
Education Endowment
trabajan
Foundation
precisamente
works
identificando esas prácticas
precisely
pedagógicas.
identifying these
Nosotros
pedagogical
buscamos esa
practices, and we are hoping
contextualización
to find
también,
that
pero efectivamente hay
contextualization.
prácticas
And there
efectivas
definitely
asociadas
are effective practices
a la comunicación y el lenguaje
associated to
temprano.
communication
Lo
and
mismo en lo
language
referido a
in
las
early
habilidades
childhood,
numéricas,
especially having to do
lo
with
que
the
llaman el early
numbers or what
numeracy también,
they
así como hay
call
una
early
alfabetización temprana
numeracy, or
en
as
el
well as
caso de las
early literacy. There's
matemáticas.
also
Por
an area
supuesto, los
in math,
desarrollos
and also the
físicos
development, physical
hay
development.
estrategias
And there are strategies that are specific having to do with pedagogy that have an impact in these learning. And why not state also we have high
parental.
impact
En
in
lo
the
referido
parent
a las prácticas
involvement,
pedagógicas
especially having to
efectivas que
do with
permiten
effective
movilizar los sistemas
practices
también
that allows
de
us
educación
to
inicial. Por
uh,
último,
work on this
destacar
initial
para la
train
conversación
school.
lo que tiene que ver con la
And
transición
so we
entre el
have a
nivel preescolar
transition
y el
between
escolar. Cómo estamos
kindergarten and
pensando los
primary
sistemas
school, and
para
how we are
no...
thinking about the
Hay aquí hay una
systems.
discusión interesante, que es no
So
sobreescolarizar
we do
el
not want to
nivel de
over
preescolar,
school
aunque sí es el momento de
pre
empezar a la
those that age, but
concientización
we do need to
fonológica,
start with the
para
awareness
la
of
alfabetización
phonology or
temprana, por ejemplo,
early
pero donde no se
literacy, but
espera que el niño y
we
niña
don't
ya esté
expect
leyendo antes de
them to
entrar
be
al colegio. Ahí
reading
se genera una
before they're
conversación,
in
me
school.
parece
So that is also a
relevante,
conversation that I think is relevant
sobre el
regarding
reconocimiento de las
the
necesidades
awareness
específicas
of
del
the
desarrollo de
specific
niños y
needs of the
niñas a
children's
las edades
development
tempranas, el
in
desarrollo
early ages.
psicomotor. Hay otras dimensiones
There's also other
de personalidad que hay que
dimensions of
también abordar,
personalities that I
y no
think we
solo
need to also
lo
take a look at.
tradicionalmente
And
conocido
not
como lo
only what we
puramente
know
cognitivo,
traditionally as only the
desde el punto de
cognitive
vista como
part from
de
the
enseñar
point
a
of
leer y
view of
escribir,
teaching them to read and
sería como
write,
adelantarse un
which would
poquito,
be like
pero
getting
ahí hay una
ahead
mirada
of
interesante
ourselves. But
trayectorial
there's an
para discutir.
interesting
Y por
view
último, en lo
of the
referido no
journey.
solo
And
a monitoreo y
lastly, not
evaluación,
only
por
having
un
to do with
lado,
monitoring and
de las
assessments,
políticas
but
y
on the side
programas
of the policies, there's
públicas que
also
se van
public programs
desarrollando,
that are
implementando, dándole
being developed and
seguimiento a cada
implementing, and we
iniciativa que
are giving it
implementamos,
follow-up.
pero al mismo tiempo
And
también
at the
poner
same time,
en la mirada del
we
sistema de
would like to
evaluación
place
cómo se va
a
evaluando los
look
aprendizajes de
on
estos
the
niños y niñas
assessment
a
system.
edades
How
muy
do we
tempranas.
assess their
Y
learning when
luego
they're
esa
so little?
evaluación
And after
conversa con el
that
sistema
assessment, and
completo
how does it
de lo que ocurre en
converse
los centros
or
educativos, cuál es
interact
la calidad de
with the
esos centros
different
educativos que
educational
están
centers,
ahí,
and what are
de
the
los
quality of those
liderazgos
educational
educativos, de los
centers? What are the
directores,
leadership? What are
directoras
the
de esos
directors
centros,
of
y
those
por supuesto, como
centers? And
decía
of
ya, en
course,
la mirada
as
más macro, la
we
evaluación de
were
las
seeing
políticas
in a more
también. Así que
macro view, the
con
view
esa
of the
introducción
policies as well. So with
nos
this
vamos entonces
introduction,
a
we are now
continuar la
going to
conversación que
continue in the
quedó también
conversation
eh,
with
en algunos casos interrumpida, inconclusa, así que
some of
Mar,
them are
sigamos adelante.
interrupted and others are concluded. So please, now we will continue. Mar, the floor is yours. Yes, of course. So we would like you once again to go to the different rooms, the Spanish room. We will give just a few minutes. We can see they are entering into the different rooms.
Creo que ya estamos la gran mayoría.
I think the majority of us are in the room now.
Okay, colleagues, I think we are ready here to start the second part. Yeah, I see. Jermaine, please go ahead.
So yes, I'm here. So again, we're on challenges here. And colleagues, the question is, what is the situation in your country? Is this the same? Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
With
okay. Same question.
the other topics, yes.
Right, different topics. I'm sorry. So what is the situation in the country regarding these issues? And we're focusing now on quality standards and curriculum frameworks, effective pedagogical practices, teacher professional development, early literacy and transition to primary education, monitoring and evaluation, and of course, finally, any other areas you think might be relevant to your local context. So remember, of course, context is important. So we want to hear from you. I can speak maybe broadly from a regional perspective, but I think this time around we want to let the member states speak first, so they can identify what are the specific issues. Raul, I think we can also allow participants to type their responses in the chat. Maybe that might help accelerate things.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, in the chat
that-
or
yeah.
directly in the link that
Right,
there you can
right,
do it
right.
there.
Right, or directly into the little boxes. Anybody can edit. You just need to click on the box. If you realize somebody else is already on the box, the way you'll know that is you'll see it highlighted. You can just jump to another one. It doesn't have to be in any specific sequence, just under the right column where you want to respond. But certainly to keep it engaging and active, we would like to hear from you. So let's maybe begin with what the issues are with quality standards and curriculum frameworks. Who would like to begin? Or should I call some names?
Mr. Anthony, can I be again?
Yes, certainly, Jeffrey. Go ahead. You can call me Jermaine, please.
Okay, Jimmy. Well, in St. Lucia, we have the OECS Early Childhood Care and Education Curriculum Framework. Okay, and in that framework, one of the educational aims is to promote the holistic development of young children. But it also says that we want to prepare them for their roles and responsibilities in society. And in our programming, the practitioners and even maybe the administrators, they tend to lose sight of developing the holistic child. Okay? A lot of the times it is because of parents' expectations, the expectations of the kindergarten teachers. How can they say, oh, the child comes from preschool and they cannot read, they cannot write their name, they cannot do this, and they cannot do that. And because of that, they lose sight in their programming of developing the holistic child, where they have to look at social, physical, intellectual, the child's communication, and emotional side. And they focus a lot on teaching the alphabets, especially in the pre-K class. They lose sight developing the holistic child, and the activities they engage the children in are geared towards them being able to read, being able to. And the thing is that at the early childhood years, we have to focus on, and we speak about assessment. We cannot give early childhood children any assessment. We need to use a lot of observation. And when we get to know the children, we know what they are there, so we know what they can do, how much they can do, how much they have learned. So we use that now as their zone of proximal development to plan our programs so that we can meet the needs of the children. And I think a lot of that, they lose sight of that, and then they get towards getting the child prepared for K. And because of that, the programming that is offered is watered down and not catered to the holistic child.
Yes. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. You're 100% on point.
Muchas gracias por ese comentario, Sefirina. Sí, tienes.
Okay, Jermaine, if I may go ahead.
Sorry.
I guess I can just go across according to the topics for the boxes. Is that what is expected of us?
Yes, you can actually begin commenting in them
So
before.
in terms of quality or curriculum framework, yeah.
Let me just piggyback on what the solution lady just
sorry.
in terms of the pre-K and what they are taught. I think this boils down of the pressure that the primary schools place on pre-K, and it's like what the expectation is that they must come and they should come into to grade K, knowing all the alphabets, being able to write their names, even being able to read and to do a whole set of things, not realizing that it's like I don't know, they do not want to teach, they're not teaching. And I have first experience of that. where they are not teaching, they expect the child to come knowing all of that. And as you rightfully said, then all these social aspects and things are not taught to the children because they have to concentrate on preparing them for grade K. And I think this is something we have to, and I thought it was just Dominica, but look here, St. Lucia has the same problem. So that is, I think, something we have to address as a region. What do we teach in K, in pre-K? And I think that is something we need to address. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Peter, go ahead. Peter, you muted, huh? Just check.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so okay, in terms of curriculum, we do have, for us, we adopt the high school preschool curriculum, which focuses on active participatory learning. So it is an internationally acclaimed curriculum, and even for the roving caregivers program, the curriculum is also, we also adapt the high scope infant program for the roving caregivers program. Now, as Wifoli would have rightly said, there is pressure on the from the early years, and one of the things we have realized is that we need to get back to our joint training. So it should have already kicked off this term, but it has not yet started. So what we are planning to do is to have training with the pre-K teachers and the K teachers so they can see the expectations of each group so we can smoothen the transitioning. In terms of, well, I spoke about the high school curriculum. Yes.
Yes.
Professional development would be our 2-year program at the University of the West Indies. And that program prepares teachers to teach up to grade 3 or grade 2, age 8, the foundational years. We don't just focus on just pre-kindergarten. So they are exposed to the pedagogical strategies for up to age 8.
Okay.
In terms of transitioning, well, I just spoke about the plan to have the training with our teachers, pre-K and K together. And you would appreciate that it has to be ongoing because of the low rate of pay, we end up having a high rate of teacher turnover. So we always have to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. You understand? So these are our plans. In terms of monitoring, we do have SR&O number 39 of 2003. That is our statutory rules and orders for number 39 of 2003 that gives us the directions for monitoring our centers. In terms of the tools that we may use daily, we do have our monitoring checklist. We also use the OECS monitoring checklist, and we work closely with the environmental health departments, which also has its own checklist, its own mandate, and they check for health and safety of the centers. And that is ongoing throughout the year. And of course, if there are centers, that where we think it's critical, we may do more than one visit, or as the number of visits that we think we need to do. So in terms of literacy, early literacy, well, as we say, we use a curriculum, and then literacy and communication is embedded in this curriculum. They are now writing the OECS harmonized curriculum. I have not seen what kindergarten looks like, so I do not know what is going to come out of that curriculum. But I know the high school preschool curriculum does not only prepare children for life, it also prepares children for school. So there is normally a smooth transitioning from pre-K to K when it is done properly. Right? When it is done properly, we know that there are inconsistencies and different expectations, but when it is done properly, we should have a smooth transitioning.
Okay, thanks for that. So a couple of questions are popping in my mind, trying to tie together Zephrina's contribution and what Vida and Wifuli would have said earlier. So for one thing, I think we tend to know that our region, we're very much exam oriented in the way educational activities are structured, even the way I guess professionals are regarded, schools are even, what's the word, separated from good or bad. But the question to me becomes now, in terms of, well, we say exams, and what we should be more focused on is an assessment of learning. Zephrina mentioned about observing. I would also add having conversations with learners. That is how you get a sense of what they're thinking as well. Is the high scope the model for incorporating this whole child, whole being development requirements at the early childhood level?
Yes, high scope focuses on holistic development. Assessment is embedded in the curriculum. And we also have locally our early identification checklist, which is used in pre-K up to grade 2, age 8. So it follows the child from pre-K up to grade 2 in the primary school. And it makes provision for dialogue between not just teachers among themselves, but teachers and parents as we focus on social and emotional development, not just the cognitive development, but we pay attention to social and emotional development.
So I have a two-part question. Is the high scope being properly implemented by the pre-K teachers? And second,
not always.
Okay. And second, would the high scope or awareness of it help adjust the expectations of the primary school teachers?
Yes, it can.
Okay. All right. Zephrina, just quickly back to you. Is high scope implemented at any degree in St. Lucia?
Yes, Anthony. This is what we subscribe to.
Okay.
As Vida said, it looks at the holistic child. It must be done in a child-friendly environment. So the child is at the center of this curriculum. As I said earlier, you see, because of the expectations and what we know that we're preparing the children for formal schooling, for K, we lose sight of it and we forget about the now and we concentrate on kindergarten. And because of that, they lose track of what they have to do.
Okay, understood. All right. I want to see if we can sort of litigate the other areas a bit. So we've spoken about quality standards and curriculum frameworks. High scope is highlighted as a good model. Are there other models I am not sure that can be implemented or approaches? But let's also talk about effective pedagogical practices. I think we have already agreed in the earlier conversation that, well, I guess the pedagogical practices themselves reflect the qualifications, experiences of the actual teachers or practitioners. Do we have any comments to make on that in terms of improving the effective pedagogical practices in the region? Any approaches we can single out as key or useful for improving that? Colleagues, any contribution there?
If we have professional development on that within the that the practitioners are aware. Sometimes so we need to engage them in some of these activities themselves so that they can understand how it is implemented, because it is one thing to tell somebody and then we tell them, but in truth and in fact, they cannot do the implementation. So if we get them engaged in it, and I have not put it together how we can put that professional development into effect, but I think we need a lot of professional development so that they can know the pedagogy, which early childhood, because in early childhood, the activities that you do with children must be engaged, and it must be child-centered, it must be play-based. And for a lot of our practitioners, when they hear play-based, they think, okay, I just allow the children to play. But even in the activities that are planned for the children, it must be planned in such a way that the children are actually engaged, having fun while developing them and promoting learning. And we need to have a lot of professional development when it comes to that.
Okay, agreed.
If I may add, the pressure also comes from the parents, the wider public, and what we have realized that we also need to educate the parents, because when parents go online and they see things and they say, why you not doing this? Why you not buying that? Why you not, why you not, incorporating those things into your program? And I think sometimes the parents put undue pressure on the teachers, and then you may have the professional development, because we have ongoing professional development in Dominica, but sometimes they yield to the outside pressure.
Well, I would add on that, Vida, that it's even more important for the parents to be aware of what the curriculum is, what is the programming. The parents should understand it so that they in turn support the efforts of the teacher. So when the child gets home, they can follow up, they can, add and augment what the teachers are doing.
I quite agree. And as part of the program, what they are supposed to be doing at the beginning of the year, even before the beginning of the year, because what we do is in June, we have orientation month in June, where we sort of give the children who are transitioning from pre-K into kindergarten, they are given an opportunity for experiencing the program while still in their comfort zone. So we bring them to K, they experience, they come back, so that when they get to K in September, it's not just a rude awakening for them, right? And we do the same for those who are going to come into the program in the pre-kindergarten in September. And within that time, the practitioners, well, the educators are supposed to be orienting the parents, the parents who are coming in, and speaking to them about the curriculum during, well, not just June, but registration is from, let's say, from January, because for us, when you come and you indicate interest and you want to register, we also do a health review of the child. So we give you a health review form that you take to the Ministry of Health, and then they look at all aspects of the child, and then based on that the results of that form, we know how to tailor the program for the children. So within that time, the educators are supposed to expose the parents to the curriculum, the program that is being offered at the school. But the operative word there is supposed.
Okay. Thank you. Not to prolong that conversation, but are there also opportunities for parents to be or participate as resource people at these centers? Is that
yes,
something
they
that's
come in, they read, they are part of greeting time. The program is open to them. If they want to come, they're part of the parenting sessions. They do what we always include our parents as part of the program.
And add to what the discussion, Julie. It is important that the schools build partnerships with the parents and the family of the child. And adding to that as well, we go back to the way in which we assess the children. When we do the observation, when we have the conversations with the children, do we record? Where is the data? Because if we have the data to show the progress of the child, I think it is easier for the parent to buy into the programming of the center than if you just come and tell them. So we need the data. We need to ensure that the practitioners, they keep the data on these children so that it can be shared with the parents, so they can see the progression of the child.
Okay. Thank you for that so much. I think Tracy wanted to say a word, and then I think we want to also look at the early literacy and transition block there to add some comments. Go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering, in discussing students, what parents' expectations, I was wondering how could we put in something as it pertains to ICT. Because I remember we were speaking to the Child Guidance Development Center here, and we were being informed of the increased cases of autism. One of the things being considered is whether screen time is affecting students. And a lot of parents now, it is being said, a lot of them are going towards the marker of their child performing being, my child can use a tablet, my child can use that, and there's a lot of screen time. So I was wondering, where can we crouch in this table the responsible integration or use of ICT at that level, or age appropriate? I don't know.
That's a good question. I would.
Could it be in the curriculum framework?
Well, for us in Dominica, ICT is part of the high school preschool curriculum.
Okay, yeah, but we can put it there. Yeah, thanks, Raul. Early literacy and transition to primary school, strategies for smooth and effective transition. Now, I know we've touched on that already, and I got the sense that those employing the high scope approach believe that it facilitates that transition. Any other comments outside of that, outside of high scope recommendations, maybe as to what can be done to improve that transition period between pre-K and K?
Okay, Jermaine, Ethne here.
Yes.
So for us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we recently revised our curriculum. So we are currently using the project approach-based curriculum, where this is where the students, the children would do an in-depth investigation into probably a topic or a theme, and the curriculum, it is also child-centered, and the children are encouraged even at this young age to have a research-based focus. However, one of the challenges we are facing with this curriculum is that in the private sector, not many of them are trained to use this curriculum. So many of them are still using various curriculum in the private sector. So in terms of early literacy and transition to primary education, we currently have a baseline data where once the children get to kindergarten, we have 2 sittings, one in October and the other in June. And the same baseline is administered to each child at both sittings. So after the first administering of the baseline data, the kindergarten teachers will have an idea as to where the children are and where they need to take them. And hopefully when they administer this baseline data in June, again, the children would have achieved all the expected learning outcomes that they are supposed to have by the end of kindergarten.
Okay.
Okay,
sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so one of the problems we are also facing, and this will have an impact as well on the early literacy and transitioning to primary school, as was mentioned with with my other colleagues, we also have this problem where undue pressure is being placed on the teachers to focus heavily on the academics for these preschoolers. So we have a case where sometimes the parents may actually move the child from the preschool to another preschool if they find that that particular school is not focusing on the academics. Also, we have a problem with our kindergarten and preschool teachers where we do not sometimes make that smooth transition because we have some kindergarten teachers are aware of what is being done in some of these preschools. So you would find that if a certain preschool, if the children are not writing names, if they are not doing if they're not doing letter songs, writing words and all of that, which they are not supposed to be doing, these teachers wouldn't want these children in their class. And this is something that we have to take a serious look at.
Absolutely.
This is this is a major problem for us.
Okay. And I just realized, Ethne, as you were making that point, someone is typing the question I wanted to ask you. And that is the question of data sharing. Are you aware of any structure that is in place so that the information, the data coming from that, assessment is reaching the grade 1 teachers? Is it an EMIS or maybe a standard package that a child leaving pre-K goes to the primary with that gives the new teacher an idea as to their competencies, for example?
Okay, I'm not sure if Alexis is here. Our preschool teachers are required to submit data the second to last week of every term from our developmental checklist. This data is submitted to the planning unit. I am not sure if Alexis can share any information here regarding the sharing of this data with the primary school teachers. But I know that when the children are being registered, the preschool teacher would give them the individual developmental checklist for the child to take with them to the primary school. But in terms of mass sharing of data, I'm not sure.
Well, no, I was more concerned with the individual student and
the
tutor.
individual.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes.
Not so much.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that is shared by default?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Raul, how much time do we have left?
Yeah, I'm asking because I think we are ready. We could yeah, we can share, of course, again to the other group as well discussion. Let me check, but I think the time is over.
Okay. Of course, under Teacher Professional Development, OSS Commission has, some of you will be aware of the MyPD initiative, which is delivery of teacher training, various areas, curriculum, special needs education, early childhood, that is supported through online training. Some of the courses are facilitator-led, some of them are self-paced, and in fact, some of these modules are still being developed. So that is going to be continue to be part of the architecture for provision of teacher professional development, to include, of course, the early childhood sector. There was a question I wanted to ask on the teacher professional that we have time in, and it's whether there needs to be more done for incentivizing early childhood practitioners to enroll in training. What is your take, your feeling on that in terms of participation rate among early childhood practitioners and administrators in training. I suspect our time is up.
We have 1 minute left.
Okay. In that case, quickly, Onika or Ethne, you want to give it a go?
Okay, for us here in St. Vincent, the practitioners more than the administrators, they are accessing training, and most of our teachers in the public school, they would have been trained up to a master's degree, up a first degree in early childhood, and most of those who do not have that as yet, most of them are currently pursuing those early childhood program, and even our teacher assistant, they are showing that interest and making using the opportunity to further qualify themselves. As I mentioned earlier, in the private sector, there is not so much of a drive for the practitioners there to qualify themselves. But as I mentioned, once they get qualified and they were at the private center, they no longer remain there.
Okay, thanks, Ethne. I think we're jumping back into the main room now. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Back to you, Ma.
Thanks, Jermaine. Raúl, Rosa, si queremos entonces hacer nuevamente una plenaria poniendo foco en la
And Rosa, if we
priorización.
would like to go back and place focus on prioritization.
Gracias, Mar.
Thank you,
Creo
Mar.
que
I think
igual vamos a tener un resumen
we are
comprensivo
going to
con
have an overall
todos los temas.
summary with all of the
Gracias,
different
Nora. Te
subjects.
invito
Thank you,
y
Nora. I
te
would like
presentas.
to
Gracias.
invite you in and present yourself. Hi, thank you, Nora Cuadra, General Director of Planning and Programming of Education in the Ministry of Education. And what I would like to present now, if we are going to carry out emphasis on deep causes, here we have in pedagogical practices that are effective, and it has to be, we have to have a game for the development of initial training, and the countries have models of education, and including early childhood in Nicaragua, we have made that is called the child development model, and it is centered in the child development and not in the development of reading and writing, etc. So to take on this monitoring as an element that is accompanying, not as something that judges the teacher, not something that judges the director of the center. And within the effective practices, we also have that it is important to be able to count on the support of experts in standards and to be able to define the concept of quality. What do we understand as quality? The exchange of good practices between the different countries, strengthen the weaknesses of the teachers of the 21st century, the change of practices and coherence with the curriculum. Sometimes in the countries we have a curriculum, but in practice we do something that is different. Training or continuous training, we also see that as something very important to work on the different transition of initial education towards prioritize socialization with the mothers and fathers of the family to sensitize them to the importance of the initial dedication and development of the child. What aspects need to have priority? Contact with the reading, with literature, to reduce the use of technology in an uncontrolled way as what is happening now. Technology has to be taught to children to be used for educational purposes. It is also important to adjust the curriculum and certification of capabilities and to prioritize the transition. Well, in general terms, I was saying that it was difficult for me to take notes, but at least they have it written and they can organize it in a better way. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Excelente
Thank you
trabajo,
very
Nora.
much.
Súper.
Excellent work, Nora.
Raúl, Germain,
Mar,
¿algunas
Jermaine,
reflexiones
any
desde su equipo de
reflection,
trabajo?
any highlights that you would like to mention from your work group?
Thank you. Just bear with me a moment as I reset my headphones. I have to step away from the machine a second. So yes. So we spoke about the same issues, and I think we were able to get a lot of insight into what the individual member states were experiencing as challenges, but also importantly what they were doing. And so a lot of the conversation revolved around what we can say in the region is the tendency to have a narrow focus for what early childhood education should be. And we agree that in many ways our education system revolves around exams. And so there's a narrow focus on, I guess, academics and pressure on early childhood practitioners and even primary school teachers as well, who focus on teaching these language skills, but to teach them almost in abstraction and not really give the young learners experiences for play, through activities, for projects, through them deciding, for example, what they want to do and to learn those skills for those experiences. And so that is part of the challenge. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, there are many schools that don't have the necessarily well-trained or qualified practitioners. So whereas in many of the member states, the high scope curriculum, high scope approach is being used, many of the teachers are not necessarily well equipped to use it. It is understood that that approach helps with the transition from early pre-K to primary, but the challenge remains with the capacity of many of the practitioners and teachers. So there's a need to really improve the integration of age-appropriate technology, being mindful as well that too much technology can also be a problem. There's some indication that excessive use of technology at an early age might have some connection with some of the autistic-related behaviors. Again, another potential area for research. We also know that many of the standards need improving, or at least not so much the standards need improving, but the private centers need to improve their adoption of existing standards. There's a need also to improve the way teachers, practitioners are making use of the existing curriculum. And very, very important, the engagement of parents. This is one of the areas that's very much overlooked by many centers, where parents can be very much themselves resource people, where parents can augment and support what is happening in the school or in the daycare, in the preschool, at home. Early childhood centers need to take advantage of that to engage parents. The teacher professional development point has been made over and over again. I don't want to say too much about it again, except to say that the OECS is looking to support that in a more permanent, is that the right word? Maybe a more structured way through the OECS MyPD platform to at least give some support through an online platform that provides either facilities or self-paced teacher professional development, which would as well cater for early childhood practitioners. In terms of early literacy transition, we spoke about it a lot. We mentioned about the pressure being placed on teachers because the outcomes that are expected are the children are going to pass and they're going to top, for example, top the district or top the country. So all of that is being focused on, and you may find the teachers want to focus on the top 10%, 20% of students, and many of the others are left behind. So that definitely needs to change from our culture. countries also express some of the monitoring and evaluation tools and standards that they have in place. Some of these are regional and some of these are on a national level. And you will see there in yellow the other prioritized areas that were mentioned, enhancing early screening and intervention for students with STEM. That has been a long standing priority for in the region. And more recently, there's a greater focus on socio-emotional learning and as well on the involvement of parents, where parents need themselves supported, understanding how they can assist the learning and the general well-being, wholesome development of their young ones. So over to you, Ma. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Jermaine. Ya vamos cerrando este espacio de conversación para
Thank you,
pasar a la
Jermaine. We are now closing this space to go to the last part of this exchange. I would like to know if anybody else from these teams has something else they would like to add. We have Iliana with her hand up, and we are going to listen to you, and I would like to know if there's any other intervention as well.
Dale, Iliana, te escuchamos.
Go ahead, Iliana. We are
Bueno, de
listening.
una manera didáctica,
Well, in a
pensé en
didactic way, I thought about the 4
necesitamos
Ps.
participar
We need
para
to
pensar,
participate to be able to
priorizar
think,
y
prioritize,
profundizar
and
las
go
nuevas
deeper
concepciones
in the new
políticas y
political
prácticas vinculadas con
conceptions and the
primera infancia.
political practices
Es
and
decir,
practices in general having to do with early
calidad,
childhood.
inclusión,
Inequality,
el mismo concepto
inclusion,
de la etapa
the
de
same
primera
concept
infancia,
as early childhood
participación. Entonces, me parece
participation.
que eso es
So I
prioridad
think this is
porque
priority
atraviesa
because
absolutamente
it
todo.
goes
No podemos
through
formar de la
everything.
misma
We
manera, no
cannot
podemos tener las mismas
form or
prácticas
train the same.
cuando
We cannot
estamos
have the
con
same
nuevos
practices when
desafíos,
we are with new
nuevos tiempos,
challenges,
nuevos
new
contextos y
times,
nuevas
new
infancias.
contexts, and new childhoods.
Muchas gracias, Iliana.
Thank
Si
you very
alguien
much,
más quisiera,
Iliana.
antes de
If
cerrar este
anybody else would
segmento,
like
también
to
dar
comment
alguna
before
idea
we close
final,
down this segment
si
or
no,
give some
pasamos
final
ya a la última
concept or
parte
idea, if not, we will
este
go on
taller.
to the last part of this workshop.
Perfecto. Bueno, les cuento que precisamente ya hemos recorrido una
All right then.
conversación
So
en
we've
torno a
been
cuáles son esas
having a
prioridades, esos desafíos,
conversation
y
about
ahora nos gustaría
priorities, challenges.
conversar y hacerles
So
dos
now
preguntas
we would
precisamente sobre las
like
brechas
to
de
ask you
conocimiento
2
que hoy
questions
ustedes tienen
about
en sus países.
these
Porque, como
knowledge
saben,
gaps
todo
that
esto
you
está
have in your
formando una agenda de
countries.
conocimiento que vamos a desarrollar
Because
durante
all of
todo un
this
año, pero también
informing a
queremos
knowledge
preguntarles
agenda that we are going to be
precisamente
developing throughout the
dónde
year.
ustedes ven, siguiente,
So
por
the
favor,
idea is to ask
dónde
you,
ustedes ven,
next
en qué
slide,
aspectos
please.
específicos sienten que se requiere mayor
What are
desarrollo o apoyo
the
para hacerle
main
frente a estos desafíos que
areas in
ustedes
which you
han
need
venido
support
conversando
to
el día
tackle
de
the
hoy? Y
challenges we've
también
been
cuáles son esas
discussing
brechas de
this morning?
conocimiento o
And what would
habilidades que
be
enfrentan
those
esos
knowledge
profesores en
gaps or in
sus
terms of
equipos en
skills,
relación a sus
not just for
desafíos
you
específicos. No sé
individually,
si
but
alguien
also your
quisiera
teams, talking
comentar,
about
sé
these
que en algunos
specific
equipos ya lo
challenges. Would
plantearon,
someone like
pero
to
sería bueno
a
escuchar a todos.
comment on that? I know it's been talked before, but I think it would be nice to hear from you here.
Tal vez la señora ministra que conoce
Perhaps
y que va,
Madam
que va
Minister
afrontando
who
este
was
desafío, ¿cuál
here
considera que
because
son
she knows about
los
this and she's
el mayor
addressing this
requerimiento,
challenge.
apoyo, habilidades
So
que ve
what
que su
would you
equipo hoy
say
está
are the main
desarrollando para enfrentar el desafío de
challenges or
esta
requirements in
consolidación
terms of the
de este
skills your
ministerio?
team members need to consolidate the work of the ministry?
Pensando y analizando
I
en
was
sí, yo
thinking
creo que
about it.
en Honduras en
I
general,
do believe that
todo
in
el tema de la
Honduras,
educación
in general,
preescolar está
early
rezagado
childhood
y
education is
rezagado por
behind.
cobertura.
And
Solamente
in
creo que
terms of coverage,
34% de los
I
niños en
think
edad
only
preescolar
34%
acceden
of
a educación
children in this age group have access to education. And on the other hand, there is a limited offering of qualified staff. Just think about what the secretary itself might need. Because of most of the reports we get about rights being violated have to do with young children from 3 to 8 years of age. On the other hand, we have challenges regarding the profile because the secretary is new. We are actually investing in capacity building to be able to address that issue of those rights being violated. So, of course, we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to early childhood education. I think that in the case of Honduras, this is quite a challenge. And I was talking before about the need of having a comprehensive approach as a country strategy. We need to include early childhood in the government budget, and it has to be part of the priorities because we need to invest in them. And of course, we face that challenge in terms of available resources to fund this. Thank you very much. Who else would like to talk about the knowledge or skills gaps that you have? Mar, I'm thinking that this question is also related to the priorities, right? Thinking about the challenges we face, what is prioritized? The minister just talked about the issue of having enough budget, right? Having the funding needed to keep doing this work. So what do others believe? What are the priorities in your countries? And how can we contribute to that from the point of view of knowledge and skills building or strengthening?
Hello, Rahul. I'm just wondering, as we're having this conversation, I'm not maybe, but I will ask the question. There are, as we know, a large proportion of our early childhood service centers that are private. And I don't know if countries maintain any kind of database of who the practitioners are and maybe what kinds of qualifications or experience they would have. And at the same time, I'm not aware of the efforts that have been made to do so. I don't know if any among the OECS or Trinidad and Tobago can mention any efforts or strides they've made in that direction. But I think it would be a good start if countries would have a good notion of what is the knowledge base or the qualifications base of their practitioners. Back to you. Thanks.
If I may just chip in here, for us in Dominica, and well, I guess in all the other countries, we do have the questionnaire that is administered every year that collects data on the schools, and it does speak to qualifications of the caregivers and the educators in both our daycares and our preschools. For us in Dominica, we do have a database at the unit where the educators, caregivers, whoever, are expected to submit their qualifications. We have a profile on every member of staff in every institution, whether it's government-owned or private. And every time, at the end of every 3 years, we try to update that, and we ask persons, to send in any new information that we have come in and update their profile and whatnot. So we are aware of the qualifications of persons at the centers. Our problem is that because of the high rate of teacher turnover, sometimes, it becomes difficult to keep up with that information, but we do have a database in Dominica.
Thank you, Vida. Back to you, Rahul. Omar, sorry.
Voy a leer lo que nos plantea Iliana también
I'm
de
going to read what Iliana is sharing from OMEP. She talks about intersectionality, how that cross-sectoral work is materialized in the projects. How do we guarantee that we will consider different cultures, inclusion? How do we develop policies that are actually inclusive and consider gender issues as well? So thank you, Iliana, for talking about those knowledge gaps. Maybe someone else would like to add something to that and talk about your own priorities, as Raúl was saying before. And my apologies for speaking again, but I'm trying to focus on knowledge, something I mentioned before. Knowledge itself understood as the initial training for teachers, mental health, of course, and mental health that goes beyond what we see in our children. It has to do with the family dynamics as well, because the levels of stress in children because of the conditions in which their families live, vulnerability, poverty, etc., that also conditions children. And I think we need to deepen that knowledge, being able to identify and define toxic stress and have the skills to be able to address it. Maybe we won't be able to solve it, but the idea is to not leave any children behind because of these issues. I don't know if I was clear enough. Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Are there any additional comments? But anyway, please send your comments to us after the meeting. We can move to the next slide because we have one final question. Because what we are doing here is build this space of trust, of exchange, a community of practice that in the next 10 or 11 months is going to be continuing with this conversation. And I would like to ask you very quickly, you already talked about exchange between countries, the exchange of best practices, some processes, having conversations through workshops for capacity building or webinars. But we would like to know what formats you think could be more appropriate, or the ones you think might be more relevant to continue the conversation in the coming months. Perhaps someone would like to talk about a method that was useful for you that could be applied by our community. Max is actually saying that workshops and case studies do work very well. Thank you very much, Max. We're going to write that down. Does anybody else would like to talk about the methodologies or the needs they have? For example, we always wonder about the research products that we release. We are wondering what type of research products will be more interesting for you. Two things that I would like to mention.
Por favor, sí.
Yes, please go ahead.
Está muteada, señora ministra.
Madam Minister, your microphone is muted.
No,
Oh, apologies. I heard someone else saying they wanted to speak. All right, then two things. I think when it comes to methodology, we need to go back to training, traditional training with universities, with certificates, because I think workshops and these kind of exchanges are nice, but we need to have a more structured training and a long-term training. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. Thinking about research, It was mentioned before. In the case of Honduras, I think we are lacking research related to profiles, developing a curriculum. So I would focus methodologies on those areas. Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Vera, could you please tell us a little more about the kind of research you're thinking about? In what areas?
Okay, so for example, I know and I may say that for across the region, we implement the programs, but we do not really conduct any formal research as to, to find the impact of our programs. We know these have costs associated with them, and very often we don't get the kind of formal research that needs to be done. So sometimes I think we can do with a little assistance in that regard.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. ¿Alguien
All
más
right, thank you very much.
comentar?
Would someone else like to add something?
¿Quieres profundizar en eso también?
Would you like to tell us more, Onika, about what you mean with tracer studies?
Onika Bear?
Onika Bear, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone. I was just adding to the comment that Vida made in terms of really making a deliberate effort to track the progress and implementation of practices of initiatives that would have been implemented for us to determine, the effectiveness, the quality of that output. So having the data and properly monitoring and evaluating and harnessing that information in a proper repository so that that precedence would be there for others to pick up and improve on or even model.
Perfecto, muchas gracias. Ya vamos a cerrar, así que es
All
ahora.
right, thank you very much. So we are about to wrap up. So now it's time to say something. If you would like to add something about the methodology or the learning formats, please bear in mind that yesterday we said we will have some learning visits to be able to learn more about how some policies and practices are being implemented when it comes to early childhood education. So I think it would also be interesting to hear if you've heard about any experiences from other countries that you think would be valuable to hear about, even if they're from the global north or the global south. I see Tatiana here saying that they think it would be useful to have a repository of best practices to promote the regional exchange because we don't have enough funding. So that would be a way to facilitate the exchange. Yes, thank you very much. That is something we are actually considering. All right, so I think we're going to be wrapping up for today. I would like to invite Raúl to share some final thoughts and talk about the next steps. Raúl?
Gracias, Mar. Sí,
thank you so much, Mar. All right, I would just like to thank you all for these 2 days of work. It's been intensive work, and we've seen our countries from our region represented here, our dear Latin American and Caribbean region. So we are still strengthening our ties, and I love seeing new faces because the idea of having this community of practice is working together, continue our work in fostering what others are doing when it comes to early childhood education in particular, as we said today. So as we said, the focus next year is going to be on this topic. So the idea is for the different initiatives to point to the same direction. It is not easy because there are so many topics, right? So I love that idea of the 4 Ps. I would mention prioritizing in particular because that's what we're trying to do to try to focus our work so we don't scatter our efforts, although we are aware of the fact that we need to work on different areas. So as part of KIX, this network, we have an interesting opportunity for exchange of different points of view, opinions from different areas. We always say that the states and the governments have a major responsibility. So the ministries of education and those who also are in charge of childhood have a key role to play because they need to lead the improvement of our public education systems. And at the same time, we acknowledge the value of the civil society because they get organized and they work together in the territory, and they also have an idea of or an opinion on how these policies are being implemented. And that is why it is so important to have spaces for exchange. And that's what this platform wants to do. That's why we want to also incorporate the opinions of teachers, because we talk about teacher training, so we want them to be represented here. And finally, I would also like to talk about the value of research of universities and other research centers, because they inform the policies and the programs, because they need robust evidence on which to build their programs. So again, thank you very much. It would be nice if you could turn your cameras on so we can take a final group picture. And of course, we're going to be systematizing the discussions. You are bringing so much information when you talk about your country's priorities and challenges. So we're going to be systematizing this, and we're going to be sharing that with you later, what we've discussed yesterday and today. So thanks again. Now we'll take the picture and say goodbye. I think the meeting was long. Maybe we needed a break. Someone said that. So maybe next time we will have one. But thank you very much for your engagement. Thank you. 1, 2, 3. There we go. That's the picture. And you will be hearing from us in the coming weeks. We will have the initial launch of this new mobilization cycle on early childhood. So thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, and see you soon.
Buen día, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. Hasta luego.
Hasta
Bye-bye.
luego.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Tracy. Hasta luego.
Bye. Bye,
Cheers. Thank you,
Tracy.
everyone.
Bye, Jermaine. Thank you very much.
Bye, Ma. Take care. Hi, Rosa.
Bye, Jermaine. Good to
Okay.
see you.
Well, you almost saw me.
Bye, Veda.
Bye,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Bye,
Take care.
Safina.
Cheers.
Bye, Epi. Bye, Weaver. Parar grabaciones.